Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere you probably shouldn't go alone, and definitely not without a backup plan. You're heading into the rough, cracked heart of the American frontier, where the saloons are wild, the money is dirty, and the only thing more dangerous than the gunmen are the women who manage to survive among them. We're talking about the saloon madams of the Wild West, women who ran empires in the middle of chaos, and if you think they were just sitting around in feather boas sipping whiskey, you're in for a surprise. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is too. Drop it in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step down from the stagecoach and your boots hit hard-packed dirt. It's hot, dry, and you're already covered in trail dust. Behind you, the stage clatters off in a cloud of wheels and hooves, leaving you in front of what barely passes for a town, more like a scattering of structures pretending to be permanent. You've got one worn valise, a small stash of money sewn into your petticoats, and the kind of backstory you don't share unless you're aiming to win a poker game through pity. Your name is, well, whatever you need it to be. The place stinks of horses, gun oil, and sour beer. Some buildings lean at angles that make you wonder how long they've been threatening to fall. You spot a general store, a blacksmith shop, and there, what could almost pass for a saloon. It's 2 stories, with flickering lamplight visible through its dusty windows, and a balcony held up by groaning support beams. Laughter rolls out of it like thunder, layered with the occasional clink of glass or shout from a card table. You're not the first woman to land in a place like this, looking for a way to stay alive without starving or marrying a man you don't like. And the saloon, well, it's a business. A messy, unpredictable, morally flexible business. But it pays. You step inside and it's like walking into a different temperature. Smoke, sweat and candle wax blend together in a pungent haze. A piano plays slightly out of tune in the corner, fingers hammering away at a ragtime tune that barely competes with the shouting and laughter. There's a bar to your left, card tables to your right, and a handful of women working the floor in frayed satin dresses and feathered hairpieces. They're smiling, but it's the smile of someone who knows where the back door is and how to reach it in under 6 seconds. You keep moving, shoulders straight, eyes alert, counting every exit and every man with a holster. You don't look like much yet, but that's kind of the point. First impressions are best made in silence. You rent a room upstairs, barely bigger than a closet, with a wobbly bed, chipped basin, and wallpaper that smells faintly of mildew and cheap perfume. You pay in cash, smile like you've done this before, and lock the door tight. That night, lying on that lumpy mattress, you listen to the chaos downstairs and let it all play out in your head. The voices, the gunshots, the hollering. You're not planning to work the floor, you're planning to run it. Historically, many madams in the Old West got their start exactly like this, arriving with nothing but street smarts, experience, sometimes earned in brothels back east, and the absolute refusal to die poor. The myth of the gunslinging cowboy is popular, but it's the madams who often built real power. They owned property, ran profitable businesses, and sometimes held enough sway to influence elections, fund town infrastructure, or even keep certain sheriffs employed. Of course, surviving wasn't just about being savvy. You had to outthink, outdrink, and outlast men who thought no was a negotiation, and that every business should be theirs by default. You had to know when to smile and when to draw a weapon, and, on more than one occasion, you had to pay for the privilege of staying alive. One of the stranger quirks of this world was the underground network of madam recommendations. If you left one town and you'd been decent, or at least reliable, word might travel ahead of you. You could show up in a new mining camp and find work, or even backing because someone in Silver City or Dodge had scribbled your name in a ledger. A sort of whisper chain resume. There's still a debate among historians about just how influential these women really were. Some argue they were barely scraping by, clinging to a semblance of independence in a system that exploited them. Others say they were early entrepreneurs, navigating the only open economic channel available to them, and doing so with ferocious success. The truth, as always, lives somewhere in the mud between myth and misery. Back in your rented room, you stare at the cracked ceiling and make a list in your head. You'll need money, girls you can trust or at least control, a location that's just outside the reach of the town's temper, and most importantly, a reputation. Not for being kind or even beautiful, but for being someone no one wants to cross. And that's how your story begins. No one hands you anything out here. You take it piece by piece, nail by nail, lie by calculated lie. You're not here to make friends, you're here to survive, And if you're clever, maybe even thrive. Morning smells like smoke and old coffee. You wake to boots stomping below, chairs scraping across warped floorboards, and a bellowing voice yelling something about a rigged poker hand. The sun hasn't even crested the hills yet, and already this town is breathing fire. You swing your legs over the edge of the narrow bed and stare at the basin of cold water like it might bite. You wash up quick, pin your hair back, and tuck your worn blouse into the skirt that's just respectable enough for walking outside without raising eyebrows, or at least without inviting any that matter. You've got nothing really. A few dollars, no legal identity worth the ink, and a pair of boots with one sole coming loose. But you've got something more important. Intention. That's the difference between the women who get eaten alive in towns like this and the ones who end up owning them. You start with the basics. You scope out the town. A slow walk past the sheriff's office, where a man in a bowler hat snores behind a desk. Down the row of shops, you spot the telegraph office, the livery stable, and a butcher who keeps swatting flies with the same knife he uses to cut meat. Charming. At the far end of the main road is a squat abandoned house with its front door hanging loose. That's potential right there. No one's eyes on it yet. You file that away. Back at the saloon, you make your first real move. You talk to one of the girls, not like a customer, like someone who understands what she's doing. Her name's Lottie. She's got flame red hair and a face that says she's heard it all and is still unimpressed. You ask if the owner treats her right. She just laughs. You ask how long she's been working here. Too long, she says. When you tell her you're thinking of opening a place of your own, her eyes sharpen. You got a room yet? She asks, and something with a back door and no squeaky stairs. Now you're talking shop. Building anything in a place like this means starting with nothing, and pretending you have everything. You pawn the only thing of real value you own, an heirloom brooch that probably isn't even gold, for enough money to buy a few essentials, cleaning supplies, some whiskey, a crate of tin mugs, and 2 cracked mirrors. The building you saw, the one with the dangling door, is your new frontier. You drag out the busted furniture, sweep up the rat droppings, and scrub until your fingers ache. It's not that glamorous. It smells like mildew and dried blood, but it's yours. Now comes the gamble. You put out the word, not loud, not flashy, just whispers pass between girls, gamblers, and drifters. There's a new place coming, softer bed, warmer whiskey, no screaming unless you like it. You make it sound more polished than it is. That's part of the game. Illusion buys time. Time buys money. This is where the real grind begins. You're not just running a room, you're building a reputation. So when the first few clients come through the door, you treat them like they're walking into the Savoy. You light candles, you pour the cheap whiskey like it's aged bourbon, and you smile like you've never once thought of stabbing someone. You offer warmth in a world that only offers rough hands and colder nights. And here's the unspoken truth. Most of the early madams weren't born into anything but hardship. Many were orphans, runaways, or war widows with no prospects. A shocking number had been prostitutes themselves, tossed from one rail town to another, until they figured out that the only way to survive was to take the ledger into their own hands. Some started in tents, even wagons. They took in laundry, cooked for mining camps, and slowly funneled their wages into something better, something solid. A roof, a few cots, a sign, the beginnings of an empire. Your first week is shaky. A few customers try to skip out on paying. One pulls a knife when told to leave. You handle it, not with violence, yet, but with presence. You learn that eye contact and silence can speak louder than a yell. You carry a pistol now, not because you plan to use it, because everyone needs to think you might. You get 2 girls working for you by the end of the week. Lottie's one of them. The other is May, a former piano teacher who swears she only started entertaining after her husband disappeared into the desert with a stolen mule and a bottle of opium. May knows how to read, which means you have someone to help with the books. That's your next big step. Record keeping. You set up a ledger, not a fancy one, just a thick notebook where you start jotting down every dollar earned, every bottle poured, every name whispered in your ear. It's not about taxes or legitimacy. It's about power. If someone ever tries to double-cross you, you'll have their debts written in your own hand. Dirt is currency out here. Strangely, one of the most fringe aspects of early frontier madams was how many of them operated on credit systems. Not just for the men who visited, but for the girls who worked for them. They kept tallies of earnings, debts for room and board, dresses, medicine, and fines for breaking house rules. Whether it was exploitative or practical depends on which side of the door you are on. Scholars still argue about this. Were these women empowering themselves and others, or simply becoming gatekeepers in a broken system? Some say they were rebels carving out a place in a man's world. Others call them traffickers in silk corsets. The truth again is blurry and uncomfortable, but it doesn't change the fact that survival meant playing a system that didn't care if you drowned. So you learned to swim in boots. That night you sit on the front steps of your new place and watch the moon rise. The girls are laughing inside. There's still whiskey left and no one's died. Yet. You survived the first few days. That's more than most can say. You're still unknown, but the word is spreading. A new madam in town, runs a clean house, doesn't take lip, pays out fair and listens more than she talks. That might just be enough. By your second week, you've learnt the town's rhythm. Mid-mornings are quiet, almost peaceful, except for the occasional drunk who never left from the night before. Afternoons buzz with freight wagons and sunburned miners returning from the hills, their pockets either jangling or empty. And nights. Nights are when it all comes loose. That's when your place fills with a blur of boots, whiskey breath, dice clattering on wood, and the low hum of deals being made or broken under the table. It's in those early evenings, just before the real chaos starts, that you see your first clients. The curious, the lonely, the desperate. A cattle hand who hasn't spoken to a woman in months. Travelling salesman who tips too well and sweats too much. Bounty hunter with a stitched-up shoulder and a haunted look in his eyes. They don't ask many questions, and you don't give many answers. You've trained your girls to move like ghosts, charming, attentive, but impossible to pin down. That's how you keep things smooth. Distance with a smile. But the town doesn't run on smiles. It runs on money and power, and the people who think they own both. The first warning shot comes one hot, dusty afternoon when a man named Cobb shows up at your door. He's not a sheriff. He's worse. He runs the largest saloon in town, the Golden Ace, and everyone knows he's paid off half the local law. Cobb's got slick back hair, shiny boots, and a gold tooth that glints when he smiles like he just bit someone. He strolls in like he owns your floor, orders a drink without paying, and says something that sets your spine on fire. You've got a nice little setup here. Be a shame if it burned down. You smile like you didn't just hear a threat. You pour him the weakest whiskey on the shelf, hand it to him like it's age reserve, and ask him if he's got anything else to say. He doesn't. Not yet. But you know that look. That wasn't a visit. It was a warning. You've stepped into his business territory, and Cobb doesn't like sharing. You don't have the muscle to fight him outright. Not yet. So you do what women in your line of work have always done when cornered by bigger predators. You pivot. You don't try to compete with the Golden Ace's gambling tables or rowdy shows. You offer something different. Discretion. You position your place as cleaner, quieter and safer. A haven for men who don't want their names heard in the streets. Judges, merchants, even married ranchers from out of town. You're not just running a saloon now, you're selling secrecy, and it works, slowly. Word spreads, and the right kind of men start showing up. Men who bring business to the town, not just trouble. You start offering private evenings in the upstairs parlour, candles, music, and just enough illusion to make them feel human for a night. You don't ask why they come, you just make sure they leave satisfied, paid up and sworn to silence. That's when the money really starts to come in. You use it wisely, fix the broken banister, replace the cracked mirrors. You even hire a piano player, a blind man named Doyle with hands like silk and a sharp ear for trouble. The girls like him. He plays soft during dinner hours and wild after dark, the kind of music that makes people spend without thinking. This slow burn to legitimacy is how most madams in the West built their power. They didn't start with brothels. They started with saloons, boarding houses or gambling dens, places where they could control the environment, offer some comfort, and build a clientele. Once they had a foundation, the extras came in. And once those extras proved profitable, they protected them at all costs. A strange side effect of your new clientele is how much gossip flows through your place. You hear about land disputes, mining claims, shady deals, and who's sleeping with whose wife. You learn who has real money and who just pretends to. And you learn which lawmen are looking the other way. And for how much. Knowledge, it turns out, is even more valuable than gold dust. You start writing it all down. Not the obvious stuff. Just initials, dates, vague phrases that only you understand. It's a kind of ledger, but darker. Your own little black book of survival. One night something strange happens. A customer, older, wealthy looking, wearing a thick wool coat despite the heat, comes in and asks for a girl who doesn't work for you. He insists she was here a month ago, that her name was Julia, and that she had eyes like a rattlesnake. You politely tell him no such girl ever worked for you. He doesn't believe you. You offer him a drink, and he eventually leaves, muttering about curses and broken promises. That's the thing about this job. Some men don't want company, they want absolution, and when they can't find it, they turn mean. But even more curious, 2 days later you find a folded note tucked under the stairs. Just a name, Julia, and a drawing of a snake. No explanation, just ink on paper and the kind of chill that climbs up your spine and stays there. You don't mention it to anyone. Not yet. Just one more secret for the pile. Historians rarely talk about the supernatural threads that wove through the Wild West, but they were there. Saloon girls swore by omens. Madams kept talismans in their rooms. Rabbit's feet, salt lines under the bed, hair wrapped in cloth. Superstition wasn't entertainment. It was insurance. The West didn't just kill you with bullets or disease. Sometimes it just made you disappear. You keep working, keep planning. Every decision now has weight. You start locking the cash box in a metal chest and sleeping with the key in your corset. You pay Doyle extra to watch the door when things get tense. You stop giving your real name, even to men who think they deserve it. You don't walk anywhere alone after dark, not even to the outhouse. Because now the stakes are real. Cobb's watching, the law's crooked. You've got competition on the horizon and money in the walls, and somewhere out there, there's a man looking for a girl named Julia, who may or may not have ever existed. You're not just a madam anymore. You're a businesswoman, a strategist, and a player in a game where the rules change every night. And you're just getting started. By the end of your 3rd week, your feet are sore, your nerves are threadbare, and you've already learned more about the human soul than most priests ever do. Your little saloon, still nameless to the public but whispered about in tight-lipped corners, has begun to take root. Not like a flower, more like a stubborn weed that refuses to die no matter how many boots try to stomp it out. But with growth comes friction, and in the Wild West, nothing attracts friction faster than competition and politics. You start to see it in small ways at first. The local marshal, who never stepped foot in your establishment before, suddenly shows up twice in 1 week for routine inspections. He barely hides his sneer as he checks your liquor stock and squints at your books. Cobb is behind it. You can feel it like a splinter under your nail. He's not coming for you directly yet, but he's circling, testing your foundation for cracks. You keep your tone polite and your answers dull. You make sure there's never too much money visible, and that none of your girls say anything clever when the law walks in. Humility is your armour for now. Then there's the preacher. He rolls into town in a rattling wagon, hauling a canvas tent and a wooden cross almost as tall as he is. Tall, gaunt, with a voice like thunder on Sunday and eyes that pin you in place. Reverend Elijah Bell sets up his revival meetings just across the street from your saloon. Every night, right as your piano starts to tinkle, his hymns ring out across the road like some kind of divine counter-melody. He shouts about sin, about Jezebels in corsets, about the fires of hell licking at the edge of town. He doesn't say your name, not outright, but every gaze in that tent ends up drifting toward your door eventually. You know better than to let it rattle you. Public religion and private sin have always made uneasy neighbours, but when the preacher starts getting handbills printed and passed around, warning of the plague of fallen women who bring God's wrath, you realise he's not just preaching, he's campaigning. So you respond the way any savvy madam would. You throw a party. Not a loud one, not something garish or sinful, something clever. You call it a ladies' social. You invite the wives of the local shopkeepers, offer tea in porcelain cups borrowed from May's stash, and serve sandwiches cut into perfect little triangles. Your girls dress in modest frocks and keep their shoulders covered. The preacher's tent sits quiet that night, and half the town's respectable women sit in your parlour laughing over lemon cakes. You don't offer whiskey, not once. You don't need to. Your point is made. Because politics in a frontier town isn't about speeches or debates. It's about alliances. And you've just reminded the preacher, and Cobb, and the marshal, that the women of this town have more say than they're given credit for, and they're not all eager to have their social calendars dictated by a man in a dusty tent. Now you're playing a deeper game. You start paying attention to who walks where, who talks to whom, and whose names pop up in the preacher's sermons versus whose kids still sneak into your saloon for candy. You find out the mayor's wife has a taste for sweet tobacco and a crush on your piano man. You learn that the town's printer, who makes those handbills, is 3 months behind on his rent and more than willing to trade silence for gold coins and a kind word. These relationships become your lifeline. Because owning a saloon isn't just about pouring drinks or managing girls, it's about reading people. Every nod, every rumour, every favour owed or granted. You don't trust anyone completely, not even Lottie. But you start forming something that almost feels like a crew. Doyle watches the doors. May handles the books. You even bring in a cook, a soft-spoken Chinese man named Jin who brews tea that cures hangovers like a miracle. The place is starting to feel stable. Of course, that's when the floor shifts. One evening, just as the sun dips behind the hills and your girls are lighting the lamps, two men walk in wearing dusters too clean for any real trail work. You know the type immediately. Hired hands, guns probably. They ask for whiskey, pay with coins that smell like blood money, and take their time looking around. One of them lingers too long watching May as she walks past. You catch her eye. She nods, subtle, trouble. Later that night you find a note folded under the till. No name, just 4 words scrawled in a hand you don't recognise. He knows, be ready. That's the thing about politics in a town like this. When it stops working above the table, it moves below it. Saloon owners like Cobb have been known to burn rivals out. Or worse, you've heard stories, bodies found in dry wells, girls gone missing after walking home alone, a madam in Tucson who vanished, leaving behind only a smudge of blood on her ledger and a broken music box still playing. But you've come too far to run now, so you set your defences. The piano now hides a shotgun. Doyle knows to signal with a change in tune. You move the cash box every night and sleep in a different room each week. Your girls start carrying little knives tucked into their garters, and you practice keeping your voice calm even when your hands are shaking. Here's the historical truth most folks miss. Madams weren't just businesswomen. They were survivalists. They knew how to sweet-talk a judge while slipping arsenic under the floorboards. They understood pressure points, social, political, literal, and when a push came to shove, they pushed back. Hard. You've joined their ranks now, whether you like it or not. There's an open debate among historians about how much influence women like you really had in the day-to-day operations of frontier towns. Were you just tolerated for your utility, or feared for your leverage? Some suggest madams were the shadow mayors of these dusty settlements, pulling strings behind lace curtains. Others argue that any power they had was brittle, reliant on bribes and temporary alliances, always at risk of crumbling the moment a man with a badge or a Bible decided to make an example of them. You don't care what the history books will say, because tonight, as your parlour glows warm and golden, as the laughter swells and the piano sways sweetly under Doyle's fingers, you feel something else beneath the nerves and the tension. Not fear, not pride, something quieter, a kind of satisfaction. You've carved out a place in a world that doesn't want you to exist, and for now, for one more night, you're still standing. By now, your saloon isn't just known, it's a fixture. The locals have stopped calling it that new place, and started referring to it with a little tip of the chin, a half smile, or, if they're really brave, a wink. You still haven't put a sign over the door. You don't need to. People who want to find it do. The ones who don't, well, they're usually the loudest voices in church come Sunday anyway. But popularity comes with a new kind of problem. Rules. The moment your floor gets crowded, and money starts changing hands faster than cards in a crooked game, people start testing boundaries. A miner who thinks he can skip payment because he bought a girl a drink first. A newcomer who thinks he can put hands where they're not wanted. A town boy who thinks no means later. These aren't isolated cases, they're patterns, and they escalate fast if you don't cut them off early. So you write your own laws. They go up on the wall in bold black paint right near the entrance above the spot where most men pause to wipe their boots. 5 rules. Simple, non-negotiable. 1. No violence inside, take it outside or don't bring it at all. 2. Pay up front. Always. 3. The girls choose who, when and how. 4. Break something, replace it in full. 5. Disrespect the house and the house shows you the door head first. It's not subtle, and it's not meant to be. You know better than to rely on courtesy. This is the West. People respect boundaries only when they're backed by something sharp. So you keep a double-barreled shotgun under the bar, not hidden, not locked away, just propped in easy reach, as much a part of the decor as the piano or the whiskey shelf. You never have to fire it. But that doesn't mean you haven't clicked it open once or twice just to make a point. The girls are grateful for the clarity, so are the regulars. The ones who matter anyway. A good saloon, like a good ship, runs smoothest with a strict captain. And you're starting to feel like a captain now. It's not all discipline and barked orders, though. A good madam knows when to turn the charm back on, when to pour a shot on the house, when to let someone cry in a back room because they just got word their brother froze to death hauling freight up north. You offer tea, or silence, or space. Survival isn't always about knives. Sometimes it's about kindness, meted out in careful rationed doses. The more your house grows, the more you realise how many roles you play. Boss, healer, banker, warden, matchmaker, bouncer, confidant. It's dizzying, but it's also exhilarating. You're in control, more than most women could ever dream of being in this era. No husband to answer to, no church board, no man breathing down your neck telling you what kind of lace is appropriate for a lady. You are the lady. The whole house wears your rules like a corset, tight but supporting everything that matters. Some of your girls come to you in pieces, bruised, starving, crying. One shows up with a black eye and a baby on her hip. She doesn't speak for 2 days. You don't ask her anything until she's ready, and when she is, you find her a soft job in the kitchen until she can decide if she wants more. Another girl arrives already hardened, with a blade hidden in her boot and the swagger of someone who's seen death and spit in its face. You set her up as your unofficial enforcer, quiet muscle. Her name's Dora and she doesn't say much, but when she stands behind you during a dispute, no one argues twice. The real fringe fact? Some madams in the frontier days not only enforced rules with violence, they trained their girls to shoot. One house in Montana reportedly had a firing range in the back, hidden behind the laundry line. Guests who overstayed their welcome learned real quick that silk and steel often came together. Your version's not quite so theatrical, but you do start taking the girls out to the edge of town once a month for shooting lessons. Just a revolver, a few tin cans, and a stretch of dusty field. It's practical, it's empowering, and honestly, it's kind of fun. Of course, the legality of it all remains a moving target. The town still technically bans houses of ill repute, but no one enforces it when the sheriff's own brother is one of your best-paying customers. You're in a legal grey zone, too valuable to shut down, too controversial to support publicly. It's a delicate balance, like walking across a frozen creek and pretending you don't hear the ice crack. That delicate balance is exactly why you start locking your ledger in a steel box each night. Not just your financial records either. You keep notes, little scribbles on who owes what, who said what during pillow talk, who might have a mistress or a second family or or a warrant out in another territory. You're not collecting blackmail, not directly, but information is your insurance policy. If things ever turn bad, and they will eventually, you'll have leverage. It's not paranoia, it's experience. Historians debate whether madams wielded real political power or just survived on borrowed time. You lean toward the former, because you can already feel it shifting. When you walk into the general store, the clerk stands up a little straighter. When the sheriff tips his hat, it's not just manners, it's caution. You're becoming someone who matters. Not in the loud, brash, gun-slinging way of the outlaws, but in the quiet, slow-building way of a woman who runs the clock from behind the curtain. Still, there are cracks, always cracks, like the day one of your girls catches a fever and burns hot for 3 days before passing in her sleep. Or when the new girl, Beth, disappears after walking a customer out back and you find her dress tangled in the brush a mile downriver. That's when you remember the first rule of this business. Survival has no guarantees. You build walls, you make rules, you train, you learn, you fight, but the West always has one more trick waiting in the dust. So that night, when you lock up, you don't sleep right away. You sit at your table with a lamp burning low, listening to the quiet. You sip whiskey slowly and stare at the steel box under your bed. It's not peace you're chasing. Peace is for people who don't run businesses like yours. What you're chasing is time, just enough to get stronger, sharper, richer, just enough to be ready for whatever's coming next. And you know something's coming. The smell of smoke comes just after sunrise. Not from your place, thank God, but 2 buildings down, a supply shack belonging to a man named Merriweather, who sells canned peaches and kerosene in equal measure. You're standing on your porch, still in your robe, coffee cup in hand as the flames lick high and fast, painting the sky with orange teeth. The bucket brigade shows up late and sloppy. The fire was clearly no accident, and no one says so, but everyone knows someone crossed Cobb. You watch the embers drift across the road and land dangerously close to your front step. A few flutter, like black snowflakes on the porch rail, before winking out. Message received. But you don't flinch, not where anyone can see. Later that day you get word from a regular. one of those jittery types who talk too much when they drink just enough. He tells you Cobb's furious. The revival preacher's drawn a chunk of his clientele off gambling and into guilt, and now your house is siphoning off the rest. Word is, Cobb's looking to buy you out. You know what that means. Not a check and a handshake. More like a visit after hours, a small fire in the back room, maybe a body in the cellar and a new woman in your place by morning. So before Cobb can make a move, you start shoring up your defences in ways that don't look like defences. First, you do what very few madams would dare in a town like this. You start putting your name, well, a version of it, on everything. Painted delicately on the parlour window, the violet room, a nod to refinement, femininity. Not overt, just enough to catch the eye. Then you commission a small ad in the local paper, not for your business, oh no, for fine boarding and musical instruction for women. Everyone knows what it is, but the moment it's in print, you're real, harder to erase. Then comes the ledger trick. You split your records into 2 books. One's clean, official. It shows boarding fees, food costs, repairs. The other, locked tighter than a coffin, holds the real figures. Liquor sales, earnings, tips, debts, blackmail material. You keep it in a false bottom drawer under a layer of flour sacks. May's idea. Brilliant woman. You also invest in something unusual for a saloon. A security system. Well, as close to one as you can get out here. You bring in 2 new hires. One is a giant of a man named Samson. Bald, missing 2 fingers, and said to have once bitten a man's ear clean off in a card-house brawl. The other is a small, twitchy woman who calls herself Hazel, and claims to have been a pickpocket for 10 years before retiring into bodyguard work. Both sleep in the back room now, neither asks many questions. This is how you survive a threat like Cobb's, not with a standoff, but with a fortress built in plain sight. Your clientele shifts accordingly. Men who once only came for whiskey or company now linger longer. They bring gifts, try to charm you. Some even ask if you've thought of expanding. One offers to buy you a building in a mining camp 2 towns over. You decline politely, knowing full well he can't afford it. The game's changing. Now you're not just competition, you're becoming a brand. And while the front of the house shines brighter, the back keeps growing darker. You start noticing strange things, a note torn in half and slipped into a whiskey bottle. A girl finds a silver locket in the outhouse, a locket with no chain and a curl of someone's hair inside. A drifter comes in asking for Julia again, same as before. He's not the same man, different build, different hat, but he knows her name, same description. Eyes like a rattlesnake. You start to wonder if she ever existed, or if she's a ghost your place has somehow inherited. Superstition has always swirled around houses like yours. One fringe story from the time tells of a Nevada madam who claimed to keep a spirit in her parlour mirror, a woman who died during childbirth upstairs. She said the ghost warned her whenever a client meant trouble. Whether you believe in that sort of thing or not, there's no denying that buildings like yours remember things, the laughter, the crying, the secrets that settle like dust in the wallpaper. That night, after everyone's gone quiet, you wander the hallway with a lamp in hand, checking doors, listening. Just once, as you pass the front stair, you hear a creak behind you. You turn. Nothing. But the flame in your lamp gutters for a moment like it's trying to tell you something. You keep walking, you don't scare easy anymore. Meanwhile, Cobb makes his first formal move. A man in a nice hat and a poor mood comes by one evening and offers to buy your operation on behalf of a mutual acquaintance. He doesn't name Cobb, but he doesn't have to. You smile, ask if the offer includes your name on the deed, and then laugh gently when he can't answer. You escort him out with Lottie and Dora standing in the shadows behind you, silent and deadly as cats. He doesn't come back. The next day, Cobb's place accidentally posts a help-wanted sign for girls. They're offering more money, fancier rooms, better clientele. A few of your girls glance at it, curious. You don't stop them. You let them go look. One comes back crying, one doesn't come back at all. You don't hold it against her. That's the cost of doing business. But you do replace her immediately, and you do it with someone stronger. A half-black, half-Cherokee woman named Violet, yes, like the name above your door who says she used to run messages for a Union spy ring during the war. Whether she's lying or not, you hire her on the spot. Anyone who walks through your door now sees her sitting on the porch carving an apple with a knife that's just a little too sharp for comfort. Historically, madams in the West often formed loose alliances with outlaws, bounty hunters, even former soldiers, anyone who could provide protection or intelligence. Some kept journals of visitors noting which men were violent, who carried too much cash, who was wanted in another county. These were more than guest lists, they were shields. The smarter madams even traded this info with local law, buying protection with knowledge. You're starting to do the same, quietly, carefully, one whisper at a time, because Cobb isn't going away. Neither is the preacher, or the memory of Julia, whoever she was. But the truth is you're still standing, stronger, wiser, more dangerous than they ever expected. And you're not done yet. Some nights your place sounds like a party, looks like a dream, and smells like a problem waiting to happen. And yet, it runs smoother than any church social in town. There's music rolling up from the parlour. Doyle's got a new song with a bounce to it, the kind of tune that makes men drink faster and smile wider. Lottie is leading two newcomers in a flirtatious two-step across the floorboards. May is pouring drinks with a rhythm that's part bartender, part magician, and you're behind the scenes watching it all, scanning the room the way a hawk watches a field. From above, it looks like revelry. Underneath, it's a business, your business, and every detail matters. You added gambling this week, not because you like the risk, but because you know who does. You cleared out the corner near the window and brought in two worn green felt tables. Cards, dice, and one crooked roulette wheel with a satisfying squeak when it spins. The man running it is named Clyde. Slick hair, fingers like spider legs, and a grin you wouldn't trust with a lockbox. But he can shuffle cards like an illusionist and keep a table under control without ever raising his voice, which makes him valuable for now. Gambling isn't just about the cash, it's about energy. It pulls men in, gives them a reason to linger, to stay for one more hand, even when they should be heading home to their long-suffering wives or their bunkhouse hammocks. And the longer they stay, the more they drink, the more they spend, and the more your girls earn. Every dice roll is a promise and a lie rolled into one. And it works. But with dice and cards come cheaters. You catch your first one 3 days in. A sweaty man with a twitchy eye and a finger too quick with the deck. Clyde spots him first and gives a nod, which brings Violet from her perch at the top of the stairs. She doesn't say a word, just walks over and stands next to the man. He folds quite literally and runs out the door muttering something about this place being cursed. Good, let them think that. You also add music beyond Doyle's piano. A travelling fiddler named Hans comes through town looking for a place to play, and you strike a deal. Food, a place to sleep, and half of the hat if he keeps the crowd lively. He agrees, and the parlour transforms from saloon to stage just like that. On his second night, he plays something fast and haunting that makes one of your girls weep. She says it reminded her of her mother's funeral, which is odd, but somehow beautiful in its own way. That's when you realise what you're building isn't just a business anymore. It's a space, a place, a corner of the frontier that doesn't ask questions too fast or judge too quickly, where you can drink or dance or cry and no one looks twice. The Western Saloon, historically, was many things at once. Bar, brothel, gambling den, hotel, but also, oddly, a community hub. Dances happened in places like yours, local meetings, even holiday celebrations. You weren't the church, but you were the other place people went when life was hard or strange or in between, and that made you important. So you lean into it. You start offering house nights, Tuesdays for veterans of the war, Fridays for railroad workers. You even try a poetry night, which turns out to be a mistake. Turns out drunk cowboys and sad sonnets don't mix well, but it earns you respect from the town schoolteacher, who starts coming by for hot cider and awkward flirting with Doyle, and the profits follow, slowly, steadily, enough that you finally pay off the man who sold you the building, enough that you stash a little extra in a jar under a floorboard, sealed with wax. You think of it as your escape fund, not because you're planning to leave, but because out here, it's dangerous not to have a way out. Still, danger doesn't take a day off. Late one night, just as the girls are turning down the lamps and wiping tables, a man stumbles in with blood on his collar and panic in his eyes. He's young, probably 20, and wild in that way that says he's either going to start sobbing or shooting. He demands to speak to the boss, and when you step forward, he blinks like he didn't expect you. He says his name is Jonah. He says someone's chasing him. He says he killed a man. You pause, 1 breath, 2, then you tell him to sit, and you pour him a glass of water. Not whiskey, water. Because if someone's bleeding and shaking like that, the last thing they need is fire in their veins. You check his side, no fresh wounds. Most of the blood isn't his. He says he worked for Cobb, just one of the hired boys, small jobs, nothing serious. Until tonight. When Cobb sent him to deal with a problem out by the rail yard, and Jonah couldn't go through with it, things went wrong, there was a struggle, now someone's dead and Cobb's going to blame him, and he doesn't know where else to go. You consider turning him away. You've got your girls to think about, your reputation, but you see something in Jonah's face that you recognise. Terror, yes, but something else. Regret, a kind of ruined hope, and against your better judgment you let him sleep in the back room with Hazel standing guard just outside the door. You don't owe him anything. But if there's one thing you've learnt out here, it's that debts aren't always about money, sometimes they're about mercy. Fringe fact? Some madams in the West were known to harbour fugitives, not always out of kindness, but because it brought them loyalty, favours, or secrets they could later use. Others saw themselves as justice's last crooked refuge in a land where the law was either drunk, corrupt, or both. In a weird way, they were the closest thing to sanctuary that some people would ever find. Of course, that makes you a target. By morning, word has already spread that Jonah's been seen near your place. You send him out early, disguised in borrowed clothes, pointed toward the canyon trail that leads to the next county. Whether he makes it or not, you don't know. You might never. But the damage is done. Cobb knows you sheltered one of his boys. That won't go unanswered. But you've got more cards now, more allies, and a growing understanding of how this whole game works. Because every roll of the dice, every song in the parlour, every drink poured under low lamp glow, it's all part of your survival now. You're not just serving whiskey, you're building something, layer by layer. Choice by choice, a little empire with lipstick on its collar and a pistol tucked discreetly in the drawer. And tonight, when Doyle starts playing again, the tune is different. Still warm, still welcoming. But if you listen close, there's steel underneath it. You notice it first in the mirror, how your posture has changed, the tilt of your chin, the way you rest your hand on the edge of the bar now, not just as balance, but as authority. You've gone from being just another girl off the coach to the kind of woman people don't bump into by accident. The girls see it too. When you speak, they quiet. When you ask, they answer. And when you look out across the room, you don't just see customers. You see variables, leverage, opportunity, and occasionally threats. Which is why fashion becomes your next weapon. Not vanity, not indulgence, power. You commission a dress from a travelling seamstress who comes in from Denver once a month. Dark violet silk, cut to glide instead of cling, with a corseted waist that speaks more of command than allure. It's not a working girl's dress. It's something else. Something that says, I'm in charge, without raising its voice. You also start wearing perfume. Not the cloying, floral kind, but something sharper and more expensive, with notes of tobacco and citrus. Men notice. Women notice more. It's subtle, sure, but it reminds people subconsciously that you aren't just part of the scenery. You're the one running the show. Fashion in the West wasn't just about looking pretty. It was survival marketing. For madams especially. Dresses imported from New Orleans or San Francisco were signals to clients and competitors alike. Silk, lace, velvet, each told its own story, especially when the woman wearing them didn't flinch in a gunfight. Your girls pick up on it, and soon the whole house begins to glow a little warmer, shimmer a little brighter. Lottie starts tying ribbons in her hair again. May digs out a corset that had been stuffed at the bottom of her trunk. Even Violet, who normally dresses like she's prepared for war, wears a pair of shining copper earrings and lets you powder her cheeks before a Friday rush. Then come the accessories. Fans, gloves, chokers, cameos, not expensive ones. Not real jewels, not yet. But they sparkle just enough to catch the candlelight. And they do something else too. They create atmosphere. And in your line of work, atmosphere is currency. You redecorate the front parlour with the same principle in mind. Doyle helps you move the furniture. You bring in heavy red drapes, buy 2 more oil lamps with amber glass shades, and add lace trim to the tablecloths. The result is a space that feels less like a drinking hole and more like a private theatre. Somewhere between Paris and a dream, filtered through whiskey and prairie dust. Men walk in now and stop, just for a breath. Long enough to understand they're not in Cobb's place anymore. They're somewhere better. And of course, with the new look comes new rules. Subtle ones. You start coaching the girls on posture, voice control, even vocabulary. Not to erase them, but to elevate them. You want men to feel charmed, but just a little intimidated. That edge, that sense of refinement balanced on danger, is what sets you apart. You're building something men will lie to their wives about. That makes it valuable. But not everyone's thrilled by your transformation. Cobb sends a man into your house again. This one doesn't ask for a drink. He stands by the door, arms folded, and stares. When Clyde approaches to ask what he wants, the man turns and leaves without a word. The message is clear. They're watching. And not just to see if you slip up, but to see who comes and goes. So you respond with a party. You send handwritten invitations, elegant, simple, to a select list. The mayor's wife, the postmaster, the school teacher, the newspaper editor, and his daughter. You call it an evening of culture. You serve tea, cider, and soft pastries, with Doyle playing polite waltzes, and May reading aloud from a book of travel essays. None of the regular crowd is allowed in that night. Just the town's daylight citizens, brought in by candlelight to see what your house truly is. It's a success. More than that, it's a shield. From that night on, you're not just the Violet Room, you're Miss Violets. The kind of place polite people won't admit they visited, but quietly recommend to visiting cousins who look bored. The transformation isn't just external either. You find yourself thinking differently, strategizing, planning not just for the week but for the year. You start writing down ideas, maybe a second house eventually, maybe one near the railroad junction where travellers are too tired to be fussy. Maybe, if things keep going this well, you send for someone from back east to help run the books. Someone you trust, if such a person still exists. A strange little footnote in your week. A stranger passes through town selling perfume bottles and pocket mirrors out of a velvet-lined case. He's pale with a silk cravat and a limp. Odd sort. He claims to have once sold scent to the Queen of England, then winks like it's a joke. You buy 3 bottles, not because you believe him, but because one of the scents reminds you of a room you once lived in. A place long gone now, burned or buried under progress. That night you put a dab on your neck, and for a moment, before the piano starts and the floorboards creak under dancing boots, you almost feel like someone else. Historians tend to treat frontier fashion as either silly or sad, a failed attempt at gentility in a world of dirt and blood. But they miss the point. For madams, fashion was armour. It told clients what kind of place they were entering and told rivals they'd better come correct. It was reputation made wearable, silk instead of steel, but no less sharp. Still, there's danger in shining too brightly. The preacher preaches louder now. He names you finally, says your den of painted harlots and perfumed rot is an affront to decency. You don't attend the sermon, but you hear all about it from half the town by sundown. A few customers cancel their appointments. One regular refuses to come in through the front door, sneaking around to the kitchen like a schoolboy. But others double down. They show up in nicer coats, tip heavier, linger longer. They see the risk and they like it. Your house has become a place of contradiction, moral threat and irresistible escape all at once, which means you finally hit the sweet spot. That night, as the lamps flicker low and Doyle plays something slow and sad, you sit in the chair by the window and watch your reflection in the glass. Silk dress, powdered skin, a house full of secrets behind you, and a town that's still deciding whether to crown you or burn you. And you think this is what power looks like out here. It doesn't wear a badge, it doesn't ride a horse. It walks soft, smells expensive, and never shows its hand too soon. You get wind of the raid 3 hours before it happens. That's the only reason you're ready. 3 hours isn't much, but out here it's a lifetime if you know how to move. A former customer, half sober and half apologetic, stumbles in mid-afternoon and whispers that the preacher and the town's new deputy, some puffed-up kid with a shiny star and something to prove, are planning a moral sweep. They want to clean up the street. That means you, and they're coming tonight. You don't panic. Not outwardly. You thank the man, press a coin into his palm, and send him out the back with a biscuit and a whispered reminder to keep his mouth shut. Then you bolt the front door, call the girls upstairs and tell them the truth. The ones who've been through it before don't blink. May just sighs and starts emptying drawers. Lottie goes to the storeroom for the emergency satchel of cash and gloves. Dora starts packing pistols. Violet, bless her, moves like she's already halfway through the plan you haven't even said out loud yet. There's no sense pretending you're not vulnerable. On paper, you're still just a boarding house with a liquor license that no one can seem to find. The sheriff's conveniently gone on a fishing trip. And Cobb, you don't even have to ask. This has his greasy fingerprints all over it. He couldn't shut you down by force, and now he's called in the Bible boys to do it for him. But you've got something he doesn't. You've got experience. First, you hide the liquor. Not all of it, just enough to make it look like a respectable parlour again. The rest goes behind a false wall in the cellar, a narrow crawl space you had Jin dig out 2 weeks ago just in case. You cover the gambling tables with lace cloths, scatter books across them, old dusty things with titles like Moral Essays and the Life of Christ. You light the lamps in the front room, open the windows, and make the place smell like rosemary and lemon oil instead of whiskey and sweat. Then you coach the girls, no lounging, no laughter too loud. Tonight they're music instructors, seamstresses, and companions in the Victorian sense, nothing more. They nod, already slipping into character. They are used to wearing masks. This is just another one. Doyle, who's seen more raids than most lawmen, shifts into his preacher voice and practices lines from Pilgrim's Progress. Hazel positions herself near the cellar door with a scattergun hidden beneath her skirts. Samson takes a seat on the porch and starts sharpening a small hatchet very slowly, very visibly. It's all performance, everything is. When they arrive, the sun's just beginning to bleed into the hills. 5 men, 2 in uniform, 3 in suits that don't fit right. One of them is the preacher. You watch from the top of the stairs as he enters, hands clasped like he's about to baptize your carpet. He looks around with that practiced sneer, like he smells something sinful and plans to sniff it out personally. "Evening, Reverend," you say sweetly. "Would you like some tea?" He doesn't respond, just walks deeper into the room, poking at drapes, glancing at May's ledger, the clean one of course, and lifting a cushion off the divan like he's going to find a naked sinner cowering underneath. The deputy is younger than you expected. Pale, trying too hard to look stern. He fumbles with a clipboard and asks to see your license. You give him a copy, the one that says the Violet Room Ladies' Residence. It's thin as tissue, legally speaking, but it's notarized and dated, and signed by a man who still owes you for breaking a window during a blackout 3 months ago. They spend half an hour wandering your house, opening doors, asking dumb questions. One tries to look behind a curtain, and finds Dora sitting on a trunk with a Bible open in her lap, reading in a voice flat and low. She doesn't look up, just says, "Have you found the Lord, sir?" The man blinks and backs out like he's seen a ghost. Eventually they leave. No citations, no arrests, just a warning, thinly veiled, that they'll be keeping an eye on things. You wave from the porch, smile all the way through, and only let your face fall when there's nothing but dust on the road. You survive, barely. Historically, raids like this were common. Saloons and brothels were easy scapegoats for any moral campaign that needed a victory headline. Madams had to learn fast how to hide evidence, falsify records, charm lawmen, and, when that failed, know which judge could be bribed with a fine bottle of bourbon. Some even kept Bibles on hand purely for show. There are rumours of one house in Kansas where every room had a rosary tacked above the bed, just in case someone in uniform walked in. The night after the raid, your girls drink champagne out of chipped mugs and laugh a little too hard. It's relief more than joy. That was close. Too close. You're tired, but you can't rest yet. Because now you know something new. Cobb isn't just angry. He's afraid. Afraid of how fast you've built this. Of the people who keep showing up. Of the women who don't leave. Of the power you're growing in a town that doesn't want you to have any. So you double down. You host a civic supper the following week. Invite the town's ladies. Bring in a fiddle trio. No alcohol. Just roast beef buttered rolls and small talk about rainfall and quilting bees. They eat it up. They ask about the curtains. They compliment May's cooking. One of them even asks if you'd consider hosting a fundraiser for the school roof come spring. You say yes. Of course you say yes. Because in this game, survival isn't just about dodging bullets and bribes. It's about building walls out of goodwill and draping them in silk. And the more you look like a part of this town, the harder it'll be for anyone to tear you down. You're in your office. The room behind the bar with the creaky desk and the lamp that flickers when the wind picks up. When the trap walks in. You don't know it at first. All you see is a man in a brown duster, hat pulled low, boots caked in dust from some far trail. He moves like someone who doesn't expect trouble but can handle it if it comes. He's polite, smooth, smiles too easy. Says he's just passing through, looking for a drink, maybe a warm bed and some company if it's not too dear. You've seen this type before. Trail-worn, road-weary. He's got gold in his pocket and nowhere to spend it but here. But there's something off about him. Not what he says, what he doesn't. He doesn't ask about prices, doesn't look too long at the girls, and when you mention Lottie by name, he doesn't blink. A traveller shouldn't know anyone here, and yet he seems to know plenty. So you offer him whiskey, take your time pouring it, and listen. People talk when they think you're not watching. They drop hints like coins, small, shiny, and easier to miss unless you're listening for the clink. He talks about railroads, the cost of labour, the rising price of dynamite. Casual things, until he says a name you haven't heard in years. Grady Sims. You freeze just a second too long. That name belongs to a man who once ran a claim-jumping crew out of Leadville. Vicious bastard. Took what he wanted and left nothing but bones. Last you heard, he died in a mine collapse after cheating a banker's son out of his inheritance. But this stranger drops the name like a test. And now you know he's not here by accident. That night you pull out the black ledger. It's not big, just the size of your hand, but it holds years of names, dates and dirty truths. You thumb through until you find it. Sims, Grady, had buried claim near Devil's Finger Canyon. Map given by BL, unconfirmed. A memory stirs, blurred conversation, too much gin, a man sobbing in his boots saying he hid something valuable, that he was going to fetch it after the war. He never did. You assumed he was bluffing. Apparently not. You've stumbled onto a gold vein, but not the kind you dig with a shovel. No, this one runs through people. And someone, this stranger in the brown duster, thinks you've got a map. You don't, not exactly, but you've got something worse, knowledge. This is how it starts. Not with a gun or a break-in, but with curiosity dressed in charm. And it gets worse. 2 nights later, a woman shows up claiming to be a distant cousin of May's. Says she's come looking for work. Pretty, soft-spoken. Dresses like someone who's read about saloons but never actually set foot in one. May says she's never seen her before. When you press her, the woman backtracks fast, suddenly not sure where she's from or who told her where to find your place. A test. Another one. Someone's looking for something. Buried treasure, maybe, but more likely they're hunting the ledger. Or what you might have seen, heard, written down in a moment you don't even remember. It happens more than you'd think. You collect so many secrets you stop realising which ones matter. That's when you realise the girls need a refresher. You gather them in the parlour after hours, lamps down low, everyone in slippers and robes, sipping coffee or tea. You tell them straight. New customers don't get details. No last names, no hometowns, no life stories. If they ask about hidden gold, maps, or anyone named Sims, you tell them to speak to you and only you. Hazel takes notes. Dora sharpens her knife. The air hums with tension, but no one complains. They've seen what happens when the wrong people come looking for the right things. Historically, buried treasure stories were common out here. Every dying prospector had a tale about gold hidden under a rock shaped like a bird or stashed inside a tree stump in a canyon with a name like Devil's Elbow. Most were fiction. Some weren't. And a few of those legends landed right in the laps of madams, who were often the last people those men talked to. That made their establishments targets, not just for the law or the church, but for treasure hunters too desperate to care who got hurt. You start hearing more whispers around town. Cobb's men drinking and talking too loudly about a lucky break coming soon. The preacher mentions cleansing the land of thieves and idolaters in a sermon that seems a little too conveniently timed. And that stranger, he's still in town renting a room above the smithy, says he's a writer. But no one's seen any ink on his hands. So you set your trap and you invite him for dinner, private, upstairs, just you and him and a bottle of the good stuff. You wear your finest dress. Let him think he's winning. You tell a few stories, even laugh at his jokes, and then you mention Sims, just once, like you're reminiscing, like it doesn't mean anything. His eyes flash, too fast, too sharp. Got you. He leans in, starts to press, but you smile and pour another drink. Then you excuse yourself for powdering your nose, and when you come back, Violet is standing behind him. Calm, still, with that carving knife in her hand. The stranger leaves before dessert. You don't see him again, but now you know your little black book isn't just insurance, it's a target. So you move it. Twice. You wrap it in oilcloth and stash it under a loose board in the privy out back. Not elegant, but no one thinks to search for treasure where the air smells like regret. That night, you sit in your office, boots off, feet aching, and you laugh. Because of course you've ended up the reluctant guardian of a dead man's lie, a ledger full of sins, and a house built on the edge of fire. Of course the walls whisper and the floors creak with memory. And of course people are starting to notice. You take a sip of warm whiskey and tell yourself something you've had to believe more than once out here. Secrets are like gold, heavy, valuable, and best kept buried. You've barely finished moving the ledger, hands still stained with dirt and the stink of the outhouse clinging to your sleeves, when the fever starts. At first it's just May, sweating through her sheets one morning, muttering something about her mother's kitchen and a horse with 2 heads. You think it's the flu, maybe exhaustion. until Violet stumbles in 2 days later, eyes glassy, asking if someone moved the walls. That's when it gets serious. Within the week, 3 girls are down, May's too weak to hold a spoon. Lottie's fever dreams are loud enough to keep the rest awake. Even Doyle, who usually doesn't complain about anything short of a stabbing, takes to bed with shaking hands. Whatever this is moving fast and cruel, and it doesn't care how pretty the wallpaper is or how well you organise your ledgers. You close the house, faster, shut the curtains, lock the doors, put up a hand-painted sign that reads, "Private function, no visitors." The regulars grumble, but no one dares push past Samson, not when he stands on the porch like a thundercloud with arms. Inside, you light every oil lamp and boil every pot. Clean sheets, lemon rinds, vinegar steam. Hazel brings herbs, mutters in Spanish under her breath, ties a red ribbon to the door. You don't ask what it's for, you just thank her. By the 3rd day, the parlour smells like sweat, bile and fear. You sleep in short, shallow bursts, always with one ear open. It's not just sickness, it's the tension of waiting, of wondering which cough will be the last. You send Jin to fetch the doctor. He returns empty-handed. The man's holed up in his house won't treat soiled doves, says God is punishing vice and he won't interfere. You don't waste time swearing, you just send Hazel out again, this time with a pouch of coins and instructions to knock until someone gives her medicine, or sells her enough whiskey to fake it. Historically, medicine on the frontier was often more superstition than science. Snake oil, laudanum, prayers. In many cases, the women who ran houses like yours became the de facto doctors. They knew how to treat cuts, burns, fevers. They had to. The real doctors wouldn't come unless there was money or reputation to gain. And saloon girls had neither. So you become the doctor. You crush herbs, you wipe foreheads, you spoon feed broth until your hands tremble, you burn the sheets that won't wash clean. You whisper lies to the girls when they ask if they'll be okay. Of course, sweetheart. Just rest. You don't sleep. Not properly. You just close your eyes when the candles burn low and hope no one else wakes you screaming. And in the middle of it all, someone tries to rob you. They come at night, maybe thinking your place is empty or easy, now that your muscle is asleep and your girls are dying. They come through the back, quiet, careful. But Hazel is quieter. You hear the scuffle first, a body hitting the floor, then her voice, calm, flat, like she's reciting a shopping list. "You try that again," she says, "and next time I won't aim for the leg." You find the man bleeding near the back steps, groaning about gold and maps and what's owed. Another one looking for something that may or may not even exist. You leave him for the sheriff to find, or the coyotes. You get 3 more sick after that. Dora collapses on the stairs. Jin stops eating. Even one of the chickens out back dies, and you can't help but wonder if it caught whatever's sweeping through your home. The only ones untouched are you and Hazel. Maybe it's luck, maybe it's the fact that Hazel drinks something dark and bitter every morning out of a chipped tin cup. You ask her what it is once. "Oh," she shrugs. "Keeps the spirits away," she says. You start drinking it too. On the 7th night, May takes a turn. Her fever breaks all at once, and her eyes clear like fog rolling off a lake. She blinks up at you and says in a voice stronger than she's had in days, "Did I miss anything important?" You laugh and then you cry, because you finally believe someone's going to survive. Over the next 3 days, the sickness lifts, not all at once, but steadily. Foreheads cool, eyes sharpen, limbs steady. Lottie sits up and demands soup. Doyle plays a slow, shaky tune from his bed. Even Dora tries to get out of bed and almost makes it before Hazel shoves her back down. The worst is over. But survival leaves a mess. You lose 2 girls, quiet ones, not close but still yours. You bury them in the patch of earth behind the kitchen, near where the lilacs grow in spring. Violet carves names into scraps of wood. Hazel says a prayer. You say nothing. You just dig and sweat and stare at the dirt. The townspeople never ask what happened. They see the closed curtains, the drawn blinds, and they assume the worst. Maybe they think you're all dead. Maybe they hope it. Either way, they don't bring casseroles. No warm bread, no offers of help. But when you reopen the next week, they come back, every last one of them, with coins and fake apologies and hunger in their eyes, because the West forgets fast when it wants to, and now your house is changed. The walls still stand, but there's something different in the air. Quieter, sharper. Everyone moves a little slower, laughs a little softer. You start keeping a small altar in your room. Nothing religious, just tokens. A hairpin, a broken poker chip, a sketch one of the girls drew during recovery of what she saw in her fever dream, a woman made of fire and lace standing over the town with her eyes closed. There's still debate among historians about what killed so many women in frontier saloons. Typhoid, cholera, influenza, they all passed through like wind through a broken window. But some accounts talk of house sickness, a kind of rot that only took the women, as if the buildings themselves got tired of keeping secrets. Maybe it was ghosts, maybe just poverty and filth, but you felt it, you know the weight of it, and you won't forget, not like the rest of them. So you gather what's left, you scrub the floors, repaint the parlour, burn the old bed sheets, you tell Hazel to double her medicine order, you replace the curtains, not because they were dirty, but because they remind you of watching Lottie sweat and shiver in the lamplight. You go to sleep with a knife under your pillow and wake with the same thought every morning. You're still here, and that has to mean something. The new girl shows up just before sundown, wrapped in dust and attitude like she stepped out of a dime novel and dared the world to say something about it. She walks in without knocking, a canvas bag slung over her shoulder, one eye swollen and already purpling, and blood dried along the collar of her dress like an afterthought. She doesn't ask if you're hiring. She just looks around your parlour, takes a deep breath, and says, "I heard this was a place where women don't die easy," and you're halfway through a whiskey and nursing a headache that hasn't left since the last girl you buried. You look her over, wiry frame, no shoes, jaw set like a trap, and you nod once. You gesture toward the stairs. Third room on the left, sheets are clean. I'll ask questions later. That's how it is sometimes. No names, no story. Just a girl with bruises and grit, arriving like a storm with nothing but what she can carry and the sense not to beg. You give her a bed, a basin of warm water and space. She takes it without a thank you. You're fine with that. You find out her name 2 days later. Leah. Doesn't say where she's from, just that she ran. From what? She doesn't say that either. But when Hazel spots the long scar near her ribs while Leah's changing clothes, she doesn't ask questions. She just hands her a knife and tells her to keep it under the pillow. Standard practice now. Trouble is, Leah's presence stirs things up. Not because she talks too much. She doesn't. It's the way she watches, the way she listens. She stands in doorways just a little too long, walks the hall at night, and she knows how to handle herself. You see it when a drunk stumbles in one afternoon and grabs May's wrist a little too rough. Leah's across the room. Before you can even stand, twisting the man's arm behind his back so fast he yelps like a dog. She doesn't even flinch, she just says, "Don't touch what doesn't belong to you," and shoves him out the door. After that, you call her the Madam Next Door, half joking. She doesn't laugh. A week later, word spreads someone's opening a new saloon on the far side of town. Clean place, they say. Modern. Fresh wallpaper and polished oak bar. It's backed by Cobb, obviously. A shiny new trap dressed up like competition. He's trying again, only this time, with a woman at the front, and not just any woman. A former girl from your own house. The one who left after the Better Wages poster a few months back. The one who didn't come back. Her name's Millie. Sweet, soft-spoken, always had a way of making men feel like they were worth more than a bar tab and a beard full of crumbs. She was good, one of the best, and now she's Cobb's partner, apparently. Or his puppet. You hear about it from a customer who drifts in smelling like fresh paint and new bourbon. He says the new place has got real mirrors, a velvet curtain, and something called a stage girl who sings opera on weekends. You don't need to ask what they're charging or who's footing the bill. You get the message loud and clear. Cobb wants your place empty. Not burned down, not raided, just bled dry. So you do what you always do. Adapt. First, you make your place harder to leave, not by force, by comfort. You make the rooms warmer, the food better, the laughter more genuine. You let the girls decorate their spaces. They paint their doors, hang drawings, even trade shifts so they can sleep in. You add a second stove so meals come faster. You bring in fresh linen from the rail stop. Tiny things, but they matter. A house can love you back if you let it. Then you make your place harder to copy. You hold story nights. Not poetry this time. Just the girls sitting around the parlour sharing tales. Real or made up, no one can tell anymore. Violet tells a wild one about a bounty hunter who tried to marry her in exchange for an old Spanish pistol. Hazel claims she once kissed a prince who died the next day from eating bad cheese. The men eat it up. It makes your house feel different. Not polished, not fake. Alive. You hear the new saloon tries the same thing a week later. It falls flat. Millie never had much of a sense of humour, and Cobb's idea of entertainment starts and ends with a bar fight and a girl in a too tight corset. But Millie's not the problem. Not really. It's what she knows. Because here's the ugly truth. She lived in your house. She knows your layout, your best hours, your weak spots, and Cobb's using that. You start noticing things. A taxman visits out of nowhere. A liquor shipment gets lost. A town inspector knocks on your door with questions about food safety. It's not a raid, it's a siege. You call a house meeting. Girls gathered around, tea steaming, eyes narrowed. This isn't business, you say. It's war. Historically, rival madams did more than compete. They sabotaged. Poisoned water, spread lies, bribed lawmen. One woman in Arizona was accused of setting fire to her rival's wardrobe. Another offered free room and board to any girl who'd quit the competition and bring intel with her. The frontier didn't invent cutthroat business. It just stopped pretending it wasn't cutthroat. Leah volunteers to spy. She slips out dressed plain, hair braided, no makeup, says she'll stop by the new saloon, act like she's looking for work. Won't say I know you, she promises. Won't need to. She's gone 2 hours and comes back with her lip split and a bruised arm. You want to ask what happened? She just shrugs. Their beds squeak, the food's cold, and they're offering double what you pay. The next night, one of Millie's girls comes by. Not to work, just to talk. Her name's June. She's young, terrified. Says Cobb promised protection, but started charging fees for things like broken dishes and missed shifts. Says Millie just watches, quiet, like she's not the one who started the whole thing. I don't want to stay there, June whispers, but I don't have anywhere else. You give her a room, you feed her, you don't ask her to work, not yet, because you remember what it felt like. The first time someone gave you a key and didn't ask for a piece of your soul in return. The girls rally, not out of anger, out of pride. This house isn't perfect, but it's theirs, and no slick bar with velvet stools and Cobb's money can change that. That night Leah comes to your office, says she has something to show you. She places a folded map on your desk. Found this, she says, in June's bag. She said Millie made a copy of the ledger, or thought she did. This shows where Cobb's stashing his payments, how he's running things. You look it over, and for the first time in days you smile, because now the balance shifts. You're not just defending anymore, but you're planning your next move. It starts, as most saloon gunfights do, with nothing more than a spilled drink. One moment it's laughter and piano chords, the easy rhythm of conversation and clinking glass. Then something tips. A chair scrapes too fast and suddenly all the air gets sucked out of the room like someone opened a trapdoor to hell. You ask behind the bar, polishing glasses for show, watching the drama unfold before it even happens. You've seen the signs too many times. Posture too stiff, hands twitching toward belts, the silence that spreads like spilled ink. The two men are strangers to each other, or they were. One's a local ranch hand you've seen lose every card game he's played. The other's a cowboy from out west, trail-dusted and cocky. Neither is smart, but both are drunk and full of something they think is pride. You're moving before the first punch lands. Doyle! You bark, loud and sharp, the piano stopping mid-note. Chairs scoot back. Girls back away from tables. Lottie grabs June and shoves her behind the bar. Hazel's already there, her hand slipping under her coat for the revolver she always keeps pressed flat against her ribcage. This has happened before, not here, not this bad. But saloons, even the best of them, are magnets for men who think a whiskey buzz makes them invincible. The ranch hand swings first, wide, sloppy, and catches the cowboy in the jaw. The cowboy stumbles, spits, and draws his pistol without hesitation. You shout, Hazel draws, and then, all in the space of a breath, the room erupts. It's not like the dime novels. There's no long pause, no dramatic standoff with eyes squinted and fingers twitching at holsters. No, it's chaos. A bottle shatters against the wall. A table flips. Someone screams. The gun goes off once, maybe twice, and suddenly your parlour smells like smoke and blood and cordite. You hear a thud of look up. Doyle's on the floor, hand pressed to his side. He's alive, but just barely. Hazel's already on the cowboy, knee in his back, pistol pressed behind his ear. He's shouting something about fairness, about being wronged, but you're not listening. You're too busy grabbing a towel and pressing it against Doyle's ribs. murmuring to him in the calmest voice you can muster. You can't see the wound well, but the blood's dark and thick and won't stop blooming. His eyes are wide, scared, then glassy, but he's conscious. That's something. Samson arrives a beat too late, pushing past the crowd, red-faced and cursing. The cowboy's still alive for now. You don't let him stay that way long, not in your house. Get him out, you growl. He walks or he gets dragged. I don't care which. Samson chooses dragged. Hazel helps you lift Doyle, and you lay him out on the long sofa behind the bar. He winces, swears in German, one of the only times you've heard him curse. You keep pressure on the wound. Lottie brings a bottle of whiskey, and Violet arrives with a sewing kit and the grim determination of a battlefield nurse. This is the cost. This is what happens when the law looks the other way, and every man with a grudge and a six-shooter thinks he's the hero of his own legend. Historically, gunfights in saloons were more common than most records admit. The myth says they were dramatic duels out in the street at high noon. The truth? Drunks with cheap pistols, angry gamblers, jealous husbands. They shot each other over spilled drinks, crooked cards, or a woman saying no. And too often the bullet didn't find its intended target. It found the girl behind the bar or the boy sweeping the floor. You sit beside Doyle long after he's passed out from the pain. Hazel stitched him clean, you think, though you're no expert. He'll live. Probably. You hope. The girls clean the blood, sweep the glass, reset the chairs. The piano's quiet tonight. The cowboy? He's tossed in the jail overnight, then released by morning. The new deputy shrugs when you ask what the charge was. Didn't kill anyone, he says. Besides, he says he was defending himself. You say nothing, but you're already making plans. You learn the cowboy was hired by Cobb, not directly, but close enough, sent to stir trouble, scare your girls, maybe even get someone hurt. A little chaos in your house, just enough to shake the foundation, except it didn't shake it. It hardened it. You start enforcing new rules. No weapons past the bar. Everyone gets frisked gently but firmly. Hazel handles that, and no one argues with her. You post a sign by the door. No guns, no exceptions. Some laugh. One tries to argue. Samson steps forward, arms crossed. The man quiets. And you start keeping a shotgun behind the counter. Loaded. Visible. The girls feel safer. So do the regulars. The troublemakers drift to Cobb's place where the liquor's cheaper and the fights are bloodier. Let them. You're not running a brawl hall, you're running a kingdom. After the shooting, business dips for 3 days. Then it rises again, higher than before. Word spreads that you handled the violence with grace, that no one died, that you protected your people. That kind of reputation doesn't just bring in better customers, it brings loyalty. A man who sees you shield your pianist with your own hands isn't just coming back. He's telling every friend he has. Doyle recovers, slow but steady. He comes downstairs after a week, pale and stiff, but plays a soft hymn on the piano that makes Hazel cry and makes Violet pretend she has dust in her eye. Later that night, the girls toast to the Violet Room, hell for cowards, heaven for sinners, and safe enough for ghosts. You let the phrase hang in the air, it fits, but you know this isn't over. Cobb's still out there, planning, watching. If he's willing to send gunmen, he's willing to send worse. You don't wait for him to act. You send Leah. She's been waiting. She knows how to move quiet, how to ask questions without looking like she's asking, and you don't need much. Just proof. Just a name, a ledger, a scrap of correspondence, anything that connects Cobb to the violence. Not to use now, but later. Because revenge in the West isn't always about bullets. Sometimes it's about waiting, watching, writing it all down until the ledger weighs more than the law can ignore. That's your power now. Not just the girls or the whiskey or the house, it's the stories, the truths, the ones people forget you heard and the ones they'll regret letting slip. The preacher returns with fire in his eyes and a tent big enough to hold all of hell's choir. He stakes it 2 lots over from your back porch, close enough for his shouting to rattle your glassware, but far enough to stay out of the range of Hazel's pistol. And every night, like clockwork, his voice rises above the fiddle and the piano, cutting through the dusk with phrases like fallen women, unnatural sins, and the wages of debauchery. You've started calling him Father Echo behind closed doors, since everything he says seems like a garbled repetition of last week's sermon, just louder. This time, though, he's not alone. He's brought reinforcements. A choir of solemn women in grey dresses and sunbonnets, who pass out tracts and lemonade, and give your girls the kind of looks usually reserved for rabid dogs. They're organised, funded, and far more dangerous than anything Cobb's sent your way because they're not aiming to scare you. They're aiming to save you. Their signs read, "Purity can be reclaimed and we pray for our sisters in sin." You resist the urge to set one on fire. Still, the campaign works, sort of. A few of your regulars disappear. A few more start sneaking around back, not wanting to be seen entering your place while the revival tent is still lit. Business dips. Donations pour into the preacher's coffers. His sermons grow louder. One girl, June, starts crying more often, talking about whether it might be better to leave and find a clean life somewhere in the east. She's barely 17 and still believes in escape like it's a train you can board, so you fight back, not with matches or bullets, with something worse. You attend the revival. You show up one evening just as the tent starts to fill, dressed not in silk, but in plain brown cotton and a modest hat, hair tucked under like a schoolteacher, makeup no jewellery. You blend in, anonymous and quiet, slipping into a back pew like a ghost. The preacher doesn't see you at first. He starts slow. Fire and brimstone, heaven and damnation, the usual. The crowd's into it. They always are. It's hot inside and everyone smells like wool and sweat and conviction. He moves faster, pacing, voice rising. Then, like a magician pulling a rabbit from his collar, he turns the sermon toward you. Not by name. He never uses your name, but the innuendo's thick. He speaks of a house of harlots, a woman who profits from sin, young girls held in chains of flesh. And the crowd murmurs, gasps, shakes their heads. Some look genuinely shocked, others thrilled to be part of such righteous drama. Then he pauses, wipes his brow, drinks water, and says almost gently, "But redemption is always possible, even for the darkest soul, even for her." You smile, just slightly, because you know the rhythm now, the up and down, the build and the release, and you know how to disrupt it. You stand up. The whole tent shifts. Eyes turn, the preacher falters. A flicker of confusion, then panic. You walk forward slow like it's a wedding or a funeral, and when you speak your voice is calm, clear and steady. "I just wanted to thank the Reverend for his prayers," you say. "My house has never been so full." There's a pause. Then from somewhere in the back someone laughs. A sharp, sudden sound, maybe a drunk. Maybe someone who's seen both your parlour and the inside of the preacher's tent. The ripple spreads, laughter, whispers, confusion. The preacher's face turns red. He starts sputtering, shouting about devils among us. But the moment is gone. You leave before he can recover. The next night your house is full. The preacher doesn't mention you again, at least not directly. His fire dims, his congregation thins, the grey-dressed women vanish like morning mist. The tent stays up for another week, then disappears overnight. Still, the damage lingers. June's gone. She left a note. Nothing dramatic, just a scrawl, going east. Don't wait for me. You let her go, not because you think she'll find salvation, but because some people need to learn the truth the hard way. The east or west, it's all the same fight. You just trade one kind of chain for another. Historically, revivals swept through the frontier like wind through canvas. They offered comfort to the scared, hope to the hopeless, and purpose to men and women who didn't know what to do with their guilt. But more than anything, they offered power to preachers, power disguised as holiness. And often, they targeted saloons not because they were sinful, but because they were successful. There are whispers that the preacher's taking his show to the next town. Good, let him. You've got better things to do, like repairing the damage. You gather the girls for a quiet night. No customers, just food, cards and soft music. Hazel tells a story about a town where a woman shot a preacher for standing too close to her well. Dora says she should have waited until Sunday to make it symbolic. You all laugh, tired and breathless, like you're shaking off dust that got into your lungs. Later you sit with Violet on the porch sharing a pipe. She asks you what you believe, about heaven, about hell, about ghosts. You think for a while, watching the stars blink awake above the rooftops. "I believe in rooms that remember," you say, "and women who don't forget." She nods, doesn't press. That night you sleep better than you have in weeks, but you know it won't last. Nothing out here does. Still, you've learned something valuable, and the preacher's tent may rise again, but now you know how to tear it down without ever lighting a match. And next time, you might not be so polite. It's late, well past midnight, and the fire's burned down to a lazy glow when you unlock the desk drawer and pull out the old leather-bound ledger. Not the neat one with polite entries and fake rent receipts, the other one. The one with initials, code words, rumours, debts and secrets, all etched in your small, sharp handwriting. The ink has faded in places, smudged by sweat and time, but it's still legible. More importantly, it's still dangerous. You run a finger down the pages, reading over a dozen transactions that could ruin half the town. Not in the way folks get ruined for losing a hand of cards, but real ruin. Respectability gone, marriages dissolved, offices vacated. Some of the men listed in this book have come through your door week after week, pretending not to recognise the same girl they wept to in their drunken confessions. And you've listened. Always listened. Always written it down. It started as habit. You'd seen too many stories end in violence or arrest or exile, all because someone forgot who owed what or who whispered what name in the wrong bed. So you wrote it all down. At first, just numbers, then phrases, then whole stories in code only you can really decipher. A man's appointment might be written as heirloom polishing twice weekly, a preacher's visits to Hazel, evening hymns emotional. You close the book and stare into the fire. Lately you've been wondering if this ledger is your salvation or your doom, because it doesn't just hold secrets, it holds power. And power, you've learned, is a slippery thing. Sometimes it holds you. A knock at the back door interrupts your thoughts. 3 quick raps, Hazel's signal. You rise, tuck the ledger beneath your arm, and slip down the hall. Hazel stands on the back step, her shawl pulled tight, jaw set. "You should come see this," she says. You follow her to the alley behind the saloon. The wind's biting and the moon cuts hard shadows across the ground. Hazel points without speaking. There, painted on the back wall in thick red strokes, are the words, "Your book won't save you." The paint is fresh, still wet. It drips down like blood. You don't flinch, not in front of her, but your hands tighten around the spine of the ledger. "Who saw it?" you ask. "Just me," Hazel says. "Dora's on the roof. Didn't see who did it." You nod. "Get violet. I want it scrubbed before daylight." Hazel hesitates. "Think it's Cobb?" You shake your head. Cobb doesn't paint threats. He sends fists. This is different. And it is. Cobb wants control. This feels like exposure, like someone trying to remind you you're not untouchable. That the book, the thing you've always counted on, can't protect you forever. You barely sleep that night. The next morning, you leave a note for May to run the floor and head out early. You take the long way around town, stopping by the telegraph office, the post, the general store, just checking who's where, who's missing, who might have a reason to throw ink on your back wall. At the hardware store, you see someone watching you. Not directly, just long enough to give you that oily, familiar sense of being marked. Back at the house, you gather the girls. You don't mention the wall, just talk about security. From now on, no doors left unlatched, no schedules made public, no one leaves alone at night. Leah volunteers for extra watch duty. Samson starts sleeping in a chair by the front door. That night, as you polish glasses and listen to Doyle play something slow and mournful, a thought takes root. Someone knows about the book. Not suspects. Knows. Maybe they've seen it. Maybe they're bluffing. But either way, it changes things. Because now, what used to be just your insurance has become a threat. Not just to you, but to everyone in the house. The book makes you powerful, but it also makes you a target. Historically, madams were infamous for keeping ledgers like this. Some say it was purely for accounting. Others claim they were strategic records of sins, things they could use if a judge or sheriff turned nasty. One madam in New Orleans kept 2 books, one for the money, one for the dirt. When the city tried to shut her down, those dirt pages found their way to a journalist. And within days, 3 politicians had fled town. True or not, the story lives because it could be true. And out here, that's all it takes. You weigh your options. Burn the ledger? Tempting, but dangerous. If someone already knows it exists, destroying it only makes them think you're scared. Or worse, vulnerable. Move it again, possibly, but you're running out of clever hiding spots, and every time you shift it, the risk of it being seen or stolen grows. So you do something unexpected, and you write a second copy, a red herring. It takes you 3 nights. Just enough detail to seem real. Just enough lies to throw off anyone trying to use it against you. You even stain the pages, tear the corner, scrawl some fake initials, then you seal it up and stash it somewhere obvious. The hollow under your bed frame, the place someone snooping might check first, the real ledger. You move again, this time to the crawl space under the chicken coop. It smells like feathers and dirt, but at least no one with good boots wants to go digging there. You don't mention it to anyone, not even May. This, you realise, is what your life is now. Not just tending to whiskey and worn-out men, not just comforting your girls after long nights or arguing with suppliers about the price of lamp oil. No, this is war. A quiet one. A paper war. Secrets and surveillance. You've become part madam, part intelligence officer. Somewhere along the way you stop just surviving. Now you're manoeuvring. That night you dream of ink-stained fingers and blank pages that write themselves. The fire won't start. The doors won't lock. And outside someone's reading your story out loud to a crowd of men in grey hats. You wake up with a start. The sun's just beginning to rise, the girls are asleep. The house hums gently in its early silence. You sit up, look around, and you say to no one, "They want a story. Fine." You stand, dress, light the lamps one by one. As dawn stretches across the floorboards like gold ribbon, you begin another day, holding in your hand the one thing no one else in this town has. The truth. And you're not done writing it yet. Your name starts travelling farther than you do. It slips into card games up London's Canyon, into Barbara shops 3 towns over, onto the tongues of cowhands and cigar-chomping railroad men who have no idea what you look like but swear they once met you. Back in 72, just before the big freeze, some say you're a widow who killed her husband with a hatpin. Others insist you're the illegitimate daughter of a New Orleans aristocrat who fled the bayou with a satchel of gold. One man swears you once outdrank Wild Bill Hickok in a bathtub. You've never even seen a bathtub that deep, but you don't correct the record. Because here's the truth. When your name becomes myth, fewer people try to touch you, or at least they hesitate before they do. You hear your name next from a newspaper man. Shows up in town with ink-stained fingers and a notebook full of bad spelling, asking questions that make your skin itch. He tries charm first, calls you Miss Violet, tells you he's writing a piece about extraordinary women of the frontier. You tell him you're busy. He smiles like he's not used to hearing no, and asks if he can just peek inside the establishment. "I doubt your readers want to see a mop bucket," you reply, and close the door in his face. The next week, a thin article runs in some rag out of Cheyenne. Doesn't name you, but it's about a mysterious female entrepreneur west of the river, rumoured to be both criminal and queen. It's got just enough truth to sting, and just enough fiction to keep people reading. You save the clipping and tuck it into the back of your clean ledger. Fame, like fire, is beautiful and warm until it burns the wrong corner of the house. Business picks up naturally. Curiosity always sells. You see new faces in the parlour. Ranchers, traders, men in suits with soft hands and questions they pretend are small talk. One says he's a banker. Another says he's an investor looking for partnership opportunities. They speak in that low, slippery tone that says they think they're smarter than you. You let them talk, smile just enough, then send them home half drunk and empty-handed. If they're serious, they'll come back. If they're not, they'll tell their friends what a mysterious woman you are and how hard it is to get anything past you, which is exactly what you want them to think. You even start dressing the part. Less silk, more structure, high collars, black gloves, the occasional pocket watch tucked into your waistband just to make the men nervous. You wear your hair tighter, speak slower, you've become a character in your own play and the audience hooked. You notice something else too. The girls start walking straighter. Lottie adds a locket to her blouse. Dora starts wearing perfume. Even Hazel lets you trim her hair and shape it into something that makes her look less like a fugitive and more like a fortress. It's subtle, but powerful. Reputation isn't just protection, it's armour. You've become more than a madam, you're a symbol. And out here, symbols don't die easy. You start hosting closed nights. Invitations only, no loud drunks, no new faces, just your best clients, the ones who tip well and keep their mouths shut. You serve better food, better wine. You hire a travelling string trio. On those nights, the Violet Room feels like something out of Vienna, or New York, or a dream. The men love it. The women notice everything. And just like that, your name spreads again. You get a letter one day, hand-delivered by a boy too young to shave. No return address, just elegant script on thick paper. Madam, I represent a consortium with interest in establishing similar enterprises across the Western Territories. Your reputation precedes you. Should you wish to discuss partnership or consultation, please send reply via the man who delivers this letter. Discretion assured. You don't respond, not yet. Not bad because you aren't tempted. You are. But because you've learnt the hard way that power offered is often just a prettier way to sell a noose. Still, you start thinking, expansion? You've joked about it. But now, it doesn't feel so far-fetched. There's a rail line expanding south, a mining boom 2 towns over. They're going to need places to sleep, to drink, to forget. And if you don't build it, someone else will. Probably someone like Cobb, who'd run it into the ground and leave the girls bruised and starving. You ask May to draw up numbers, quietly, just estimates. Construction costs, permits, staffing. She nods, already pulling out her pen, and the small notebook she keeps tucked inside her apron. She doesn't say anything, just gets to work. That's why you trust her. Of course, word of your growing influence doesn't just travel to admirers. Cobb, ever petty, posts a full-page flyer in town for his next big event, a gentleman's club grand gala featuring dancing girls, live music and surprises. It's loud, garish, and more importantly, scheduled on the same night as one of your private dinners. You change nothing. Let him dance for crumbs. Let his girls wear sequins and samar with dead eyes, while the town's real moneymen sip Bordeaux in your parlour and whisper about land deals. Cobb's still throwing punches, but you're playing chess. Still, you don't let your guard down, because for every man who praises you in one room, there's another who curses you in another. You've become a power player, yes, but also a target. And when a woman's reputation gets too big, especially one who profits outside the bounds of what they call virtue, people start looking for reasons to take her down. You hear murmurs, nothing solid, just whispers about city marshals, about external pressure to clean up frontier towns, about civilizing influences. You laugh at the term. Civilization out here means shoving sin behind doors and pretending the dust doesn't carry bones. But you start preparing anyway. New safe, new hiding spot for the real ledger. You make copies of key pages, just enough to ruin the right people, and send them to a lawyer you met once at one of your private dinners. He's discreet, hungry, and he owes you for a night he'd rather forget. Some scholars still debate whether Madames like you really had power, or whether it was all just illusion. But they never had to juggle ledgers full of names and favours, or run a staff of 24 people without once raising your voice. They never had to smile at a preacher while hiding the fact that you know exactly what he paid for on his trip to San Francisco. You're not guessing anymore. You're building, carefully, quietly, because your name might be a myth now, but you intend to live long enough to cash in on it. That night you sit in the office with a glass of something aged and rich. Doyle's playing softly in the background. May's humming as she scribbles numbers in her notebook. Violet's cleaning her gun near the fireplace, and you're thinking not about survival, but about legacy. Because power in this world doesn't come from how many people you control, it comes from how many people need you. And more, this town does. It begins with a whisper, and ends with an empty bed. One morning, just after sunrise, Dora knocks on your door. Her face is pale, voice low. "We've got a ghost," she says, and you already know what she means. Not the kind with rattling chains or cold spots, but the kind who was here yesterday and is now gone without a trace. The room is Leah's. She's not in it. The bed's made. Her few clothes are gone. The knife you gave her is missing too. There's no note, no sound, just a teacup on the windowsill still warm. Hazel checks the alley and the chicken coop. Violet checks the train station. Nothing. Leah is gone. You sit down hard on the edge of the bed and stare at the sunlight striping across the floor. Leah was solid, quiet, capable. She'd been pulling double watch shifts for weeks, knew how to pick a lock, how to vanish, but she never hinted she was planning to. You thought she was loyal, trusted her more than most, but now she's smoke. The girls gather in the kitchen. No one says her name right away. They just eat slow, picking at biscuits and eggs like maybe Leah's going to walk in at any second and ask what the fuss is about. She doesn't. You spend the rest of the day pretending it doesn't rattle you. You check the ledgers, she didn't take them. You check the safe intact, you check the fake ledger, the one under your bed, and find the tiniest thing out of place. The folded corner turned backward. Someone's opened it, looked into, maybe days ago, maybe last night. You curse under your breath. You've been careful, obsessively so. And now you're not sure what's gone and what's just moved. You don't want to believe she betrayed you. But out here, belief is a luxury. Survival requires paranoia. That evening you gather the girls again. You don't accuse, you don't blame, you just remind them this house works because it's held together by trust. Not blind trust, but deliberate loyalty. And when someone breaks that bond, it doesn't just threaten you, it threatens everyone. Lottie nods. Hazel says nothing but cracks her knuckles one by one. May just closes her eyes and exhales like she already knew this day was coming. Historically, Madam's lost girls often, runaways, drifters, disappearances that never got a sheriff's visit, never made it to the back of a newspaper. Some left for love, or gold, or some misguided hope of redemption. Others just vanished. Stolen maybe, or worse. And the Madams, they had to move on. One less mouth to feed, one more name to erase from the book. You're not ready to erase Leah yet. You send out quiet feelers, pay a stagecoach driver to ask questions at nearby towns. Tell the banker's errand boy you're looking for a cousin gone travelling. Pay a coppersmith to listen in at Cobb's place and report anything strange. Not a lot, just enough to shake the brush and see what scurries out. 3 days pass. No sign. Then the message comes. A slip of paper folded into your laundry delivery. One line. She's with him now. No name, but you know, Cobb. Of course it's Cobb. You replay every conversation you had with Leah, every side glance, every time she asked about the ledger. Was she planted, bought, or did he catch her on a vulnerable night, offer her more than you could? She never seemed the type. But you've lived long enough to know that desperation wears many faces. You don't cry, you don't scream, you just go very, very still, because now you're not dealing with a rival, you're dealing with a thief, not just of property, of trust. That night you hold the real ledger in your lap like it might float away if you blink. You reread entries Leah might have seen, who you've paid, who's paid you. A few things Cobb could use to smear you, but not enough to destroy you, not yet. Still, you know how this game works. He doesn't have to kill your reputation, he just has to tarnish it. A rumour here, a name slip there. Soon the men who visit will stop tipping so well. The girls will start wondering if they should take better offers. The whole house, your house, will shift under your feet. So you brace! And you plan. First, you bring the girls into the room one by one. Tell them the truth. Short version. Leah left. Cobb's involved. No secrets. No panic. Just facts. Lottie curses. Dora offers to poison his water barrel. Hazel volunteers to burn the new saloon down and blame it on bandits. You tell them no, not yet. Then you change the rules. From now on, no one works alone, even upstairs, even with regulars. Hazel and Violet rotate outside patrols. Samson watches the back alley. Every dollar is counted twice. Every visitor's name goes into a new logbook written in May's meticulous hand. You're not just protecting yourself now, you're reinforcing the house like it's a fort. And yet, beneath the calm, you feel it. The sting of betrayal. Leah wasn't just a worker. She was yours. And that kind of loss doesn't fade easy. It itches. It burns. It whispers. You start seeing her in corners. For a moment, her braid in a mirror. Her boots down the hall. But it's just memory playing tricks. You sit longer at night. Drink a little more. Sleep a little less. But you don't weaken. Because the house watches you. Every creak of the floor, every breath in the parlour, it all pivots around you. And if you fall apart now, everything you've built becomes kindling. So you write Leah's name at the very back of the ledger. No date, no story, just her name. A mark to remember what happens when trust walks out the front door in silence. Scholars like to paint madams as schemers or saints. They miss the in-between. The way a betrayal like this doesn't just wound, it educates. You learn who you can count on, who you are, what your walls are made of. So you sit in your office, lamplight low, listening to Doyle hum something that sounds like morning. You hold the ledger, and you wait. Because someday soon, Leah will make a mistake, and when she does, you'll be ready. He shows up just after the rain, soaked from hat to boot heel, eyes wild like he's ridden through the end of the world to get here. You don't recognise him at first. He's thinner than before, face hollowed, jaw grown a beard that doesn't suit him. But then he says your name. Not the one you use now, the old one, the one you haven't heard since the Missouri River, and the girl who cried on the floor of a boarding house for 2 days straight. And just like that, the past is standing in your doorway. His name is Eli. You once thought you'd marry him. Back before corsets and ledgers, back when your hands were soft and your heart had room for things like poems. You knew him when you were 19 and stupid, and still thought you could love a man without losing yourself in the process. He left you then, for what you never learned. He just disappeared. And now he's back. He doesn't ask permission. Just crosses the threshold like he still has a place here. Dripping all over your floor, shaking with something between nerves and need. The girls step aside, quiet. Hazel raises an eyebrow. You nod once, just enough to say, "I've got this." You take him to the office, pour him a drink. He stares at it like it might bite. "I heard about you," he says eventually. "Heard a lot." "Then you probably heard I don't have time for ghosts." That makes him laugh, but it's brittle. "You always did like your own lines," he mutters. You lean back, arms crossed. He's looking around like the room might rearrange itself. His fingers twitch. His eyes flick to the fireplace, then the window, then you. "I made mistakes," he says. You say nothing. "I left because I didn't think I was good enough for you. Thought maybe if I made something of myself." He trails off. You wait. You've learnt the value of silence. It stretches like rope. Eventually, they always tug on it. "I was wrong," he finishes. You stand slowly, walk to the window. Rain still patters the alley. "You didn't come here to apologise." He flinches. You can hear it. "No," he admits. "I came because I need your help." There it is, the real reason. Not love, not regret, a favour. He spins a story, quick, like he's rehearsed it. Some man after him, a debt, a bad card game in Prescott or maybe El Paso. He says he's changed, says he's just looking for a place to rest, maybe work off what he owes. You almost laugh. "Work? Here?" You say nothing. Just keep watching the rain. Then soften, he says, "You still wear that locket. Your back stiffens. You haven't worn it in years. It's buried in a drawer, along with a letter you never sent and a photograph of your sister from before everything went sideways." You turn and meet his gaze, sharp and flat. "What are you really running from?" He opens his mouth, closes it. You see it in his face. He's not ready to say, or can't, or won't. But you also see something else. Not just fear, not just need. Obsession. You've seen it before. Men who fall in love with the idea of you, the woman who got away, who built something, who didn't fall apart like they expected. They come back because they want to claim credit, or worse, a piece. "I can sleep in the cellar," he offers, too fast, "just for a few nights. I won't cause trouble." You nod slowly, then say, "One night." You sleep in the storage room. Hazel will lock the door from the outside. You touch one girl, even look too long, and you won't make it to the next county. He nods, doesn't argue. He knows you mean it. That night the house is quiet, but your thoughts aren't. You lie awake wondering if he's telling the truth. If he's here because of love or because he wants to finish what he started when he left you broken all those years ago. You can't tell, not yet, but you're watching. The next morning he's still there. Moved a few crates, helped Jin chop wood, even carried a bucket for May like he belonged. The girls are sceptical. Lottie calls him the stray. Hazel just narrows her eyes whenever he passes. Then 3 days in you catch him in the parlour talking to Dora. Nothing inappropriate, just talking. But it sets off something cold in your chest, because Dora's young, still soft in ways she tries to hide, and he's looking at her, you'll saw at her like she reminds him of someone. You call him back to the office, sit him down, ask him again what he's running from. This time he tells you. He killed a man, not just in self-defense, it was personal, a rival, something to do with a woman or maybe land, and it's hazy, conveniently so. But the details don't matter. What matters is, he's wanted, and someone's on his trail, someone with a badge. Why come to me, you ask? Because you're the only one who ever saw me as more than a mistake. That sounds romantic, but it's not. It's manipulation wrapped in sentiment. You feel it like a sliver. Later that week, a man shows up asking questions, not Cobb's kind. Lawman, plain clothes, says he's looking for someone who fits Eli's description. Travelling preacher, maybe, he lies smoothly. We think he witnessed a murder. You nod politely, say you haven't seen anyone new. He leaves a card anyway. You burn it, because now you've got a problem. Eli isn't dangerous because he's violent. He's dangerous because you once loved him, because there's still a version of you that wants to believe he could be saved. That maybe you were right back then. That maybe, just maybe, he's not lying. But you've also built too much to let one man unravel it. You start watching him closely. Track where he goes, who he talks to, how he looks at the girls. You never catch anything bad, but you know what's coming. Obsession doesn't just fade. Some madams were stalked by former lovers. Men who thought they'd been wronged, forgotten, replaced. Sometimes they sent flowers. Sometimes they brought guns. One madam in Texas had to disappear entirely. Change her name, start over in a mining camp. You're not there. Yet. But you feel the edge of it creeping in. Then one night, after lights are out, you find Eli standing in your office. He's holding the photo of your sister. The one you thought was buried under a stack of old bills. He doesn't say anything, just looks at it. "I missed you," he whispers. You say nothing, just reach for the pistol under your desk. And you realise then, this isn't about survival anymore. It's about boundaries, and what you're willing to destroy to keep them. You're standing in the hallway, watching a wedding happen in your front parlour. Sort of. There's no preacher, no papers, no flowers or vows. Just a man on one knee with a tarnished ring and a girl too stunned to say anything. Her name is Dora, and she's holding the ring like it's a piece of evidence. The man is a rancher from outside town, goes by Jack, talks with a slow, nervous drawl, and has been coming around for the past few weeks, always asking for Dora and no one else. You already knew this moment was coming. You could see it from the way she'd started smoothing her skirts when he came in, how her smile would soften when she passed him a drink. It wasn't lust, it was longing. The kind of longing that curls around a girl's ribs when she thinks someone sees her for more than her trade. And now here he is, hat in hand, a gold band pulled from his father's drawer offering her a life. You watch her stare at him, the room too quiet. The other girls pretend to busy themselves. Hazel wiping already clean glasses, Lottie rearranging chairs that don't need it. No one wants to break the moment, or witness it. You clear your throat. Jack stands up fast like he forgot you existed. "I meant to speak to you, ma'am," he says. "Just didn't want to waste time." You give him a long look. He's not drunk, not high, not dangerous, just hopeful. It's almost worse. You ask him to step outside with you. Dora doesn't stop him. She sits back down, ring still in hand, eyes far away. Out on the porch, you lean against the rail and let the rain from earlier roll down the eaves. "Do you know what you're asking her to give up?" you say. He nods. "I do, and I'll make sure she never has to go back to it." You sigh. It's not about going back. It's about who she's allowed to be after. He frowns. "I wouldn't shame her if that's what you mean." "No," you say softly. "You'd pity her. You'd try to rescue her, and when she didn't act grateful enough, you'd start to resent her. Maybe not next week, maybe not next year, but it always comes." He swallows hard, does not argue. That tells you more than any denial would. You send him home that night, politely. Tell him Dora needs time, that if he really wants her, he'll come back in a week, with a plan, not just a ring. He agrees, nods, promises, leaves. You don't expect to see him again. Inside, Dora's still at the table, staring at her hands. You sit beside her. "He meant it," she whispers. "I think he really meant it." "Doesn't mean he can give it to you," you reply. She nods, tears in her eyes. "Do you think I could ever be just a wife?" You don't answer that, because that word just is the problem. Later that night you find her packing. Small bag, only what she can carry. "I need to try," she says, "even if it fails." You consider stopping her, reminding her how many girls left for fairy tales and came back in pieces. But then you remember the look in her eyes when she saw that ring. Not greed, not ambition, just maybe. So you help her fold her clothes, you give her some money, enough for a train if she needs one. You hand her a small pistol too, wrapped in linen, just in case her dream turns sour. "Don't write," you say, "not unless you're happy." She nods, hugs you tight. Smells like lilac powder and fresh tears. Then she's gone. Just like that. One less girl in the house. One more name to scratch off the books. Historically, girls did leave. For husbands, for lovers, for imagined futures in towns that promised clean slates. Some made it, some didn't. Some ended up back in brothels, their rings pawned, their stories shortened to avoid pity. But a few built lives, quiet ones, ordinary ones. And sometimes that was the miracle. The next week Jack returns. Alone, hat in hand again. Face a little different now. "She got on a train," he says. "Didn't say where." You nod. "Good." He doesn't know what to say to that. Eventually he leaves. This time he doesn't promise anything. The parlour feels a little quieter after that. One less voice, one less shadow crossing the hallway. You move her things into the spare room. Hazel finds her comb tucked under the dresser and leaves it on your desk like a eulogy. The other girls don't talk about it much, but they all feel it. The echo of someone who made it out. Maybe. Hopefully. Meanwhile, other men start asking the same question. Not about Dora, but about marriage. You get 2 proposals in a week. One from a banker who thinks it'll elevate your standing. One from a travelling merchant who's read the Cheyenne article and thinks you'll make a good business partner, and maybe more. You laugh both off, politely of course, but firmly, because you know what marriage really means out here. It means trading your name for his, your business for his land, your voice for his opinion, and if you're lucky, you get a warm bed. If you're not, you get silence, or worse. One girl, Clara, asks if you ever wanted a husband. You say yes, once. Then you say, but I found something better. She waits for you to explain, but you don't. Because how do you describe this? A house that listens, a business that bends around your will, a table full of women who eat and laugh and cry and never ask you to be anything but yourself, a ledger full of secrets, a piano full of old songs, a locked drawer with enough information to keep half the town polite. That's not a marriage, that's a kingdom, and you're not giving it up for a ring. Later that month you receive a letter. No return address, just Dora's handwriting. I'm away welcome, Keith. I don't know if I'm happy yet, but I'm safe. That's a start. You place the letter in the ledger, not in the front where business goes, in the back, the part reserved for the things that matter most. You don't reply, but you do whisper her name when you pass the room she used to sleep in. Not because you miss her, but because she made it out, and out here that's a rare kind of holy. The wind comes in hot from the south, heavy with dust and strange tension, and you know before you even step outside that something's wrong, not the usual wrong, not a drunk at the wrong door or a fight brewing over a girl's smile. This is deeper, wider, the kind of wrong that wraps itself around the whole town like a noose waiting for a tug. It starts with a cough, a simple one from Jin, out behind the coop hauling water, but it's a hard sound, wet and sharp like his lungs are folding inward. By evening he's doubled over, shivering despite the heat, too weak to hold a spoon. You call for Hazel, who checks his pulse and pulls a sour face. He's burning up, she mutters. This ain't whiskey fever, this is something else. You send for the doctor again, though you already know how that'll go. Same answer as before, no house calls for your kind, no medicine for working women, not unless you've got gold to buy your place back into decency. You send Hazel out anyway. She's learned who sells real cures and who sells snake oil. She brings back a vial of something thick and foul wrapped in cloth and desperation. Jin swallows it. You wait. The next morning Lottie starts coughing. Then Violet. Then the chickens die. Not one. All of them. Legs up, beaks open, eyes staring at something no one else can see. The girls gather in the kitchen, whispering. You hear words like plague, poison, curse. May tries to calm them, offers tea, starts baking like a spell, but fear moves faster than fire. By nightfall, no one's sleeping. You lock the doors, not because you think it'll stop anything, but because it's the only thing you can still control. You've lived through fever before. The last one nearly took half your house. You still remember the smell, the colour of sweat soaked into the floorboards, the sound of someone dying quietly because they didn't want to bother you. You swore you'd never go through it again, but the West doesn't care about promises. You move the sick to one side of the house, clear out the spare rooms, wash everything with vinegar and salt water. Hazel mixes herbs, Violet boils linen strips, May writes fever charts with a shaking hand. You sleep in a chair most nights, shotgun across your lap as if germs care about lead. And outside, the rest of the town pretends they don't see it. No one asks why the lights are low, no one brings medicine or bread. Cobb's place stays open like nothing's wrong, pumping music and whiskey into the air like poison into a river. The preacher's tent is long gone, but his sermons echo in the way people avoid your street. They think this is judgment. You think it's just nature doing what it always does, clearing space. By the third day, Jin's not coughing anymore, because he's not breathing at all. You bury him behind the chicken coop, same as the last ones. Hazel says a few words. Lottie sobs until her body shakes. You say nothing. You're too tired. Then, as if the universe is taunting you, the rains come. Not soft, blessed spring rain. A deluge. A storm that turns your roof into a sieve, and the alley into a river of mud. The wind howls through cracks you didn't know existed. The ceiling leaks in 3 rooms. The back wall warps. The parlour floods. Everything breaks at once. Hazel slips on wet floorboards and cracks her shoulder against the stove. May faints while mopping. Violet burns herself trying to dry blankets by the hearth. And you keep going. Because you have to. Because they're looking to you like you're the answer. Like you know how to fix this. Like you're more than just a madame with good handwriting and sharper instincts. And maybe you are. Maybe this is what power really is. Not gold or gossip, not secrets in a ledger, but the ability to stand in a crumbling house soaking wet, 2 fingers on a feverish forehead, and say, "We're going to make it through this." Even if it's a lie. Historically, disasters like this levelled frontier towns. Fire, flood, fever, they came without warning and spared no one. But while churches collapsed and banks shuttered, the saloons and brothels, oddly enough, often endured. Madams rebuilt. Girls stitched roofs by hand. Whiskey became disinfectant. Music still played, even if softly. You understand now why. Because when the world tilts, people come back to the places that always kept the lights on, even if they never said thank you. On the 4th day, a miracle. Lottie sits up. Her fever breaks. She asks for soup. That night, Violet manages a smile. Hazel drinks half a bottle of bourbon and falls asleep upright in a chair. May hums while stirring something that smells like hope. You sit by the fire, wet boots steaming, ledger in your lap. You don't write numbers, you write names. Gin, Claire, Dora, Leah, every girl who came through and left something behind. The girls wake slowly. The house breathes again. You patch the walls, dry the sheets, restock the pantry with what little money's left. A local trader, silent partner, though he'd never admit it, sends flour, salted pork, and a bag of hard candy. No note, just a crate marked with your name spelled right. You chalk it up as a win. By the end of the week, the rain stopped. The air smells cleaner. The girls start wearing colour again. Lottie even paints her lips and smiles at the mirror like she doesn't recognise herself. You reopen the house with no fanfare, just a sign that says open for life. The first customer to return is an old man who once wept on your floor about a dead wife and a lost watch. He doesn't ask for anything, just sits in the corner and listens to Doyle play. A few more follow. Quiet, respectful. They don't mention the fever. You don't ask where they were when you needed help. You already know. Some say survival is luck, others say it's grit. But you know better. It's community, ugly, bruised, broken community. And you're the glue. You sweep the parlour floor, light the lamps, straighten the chairs. You open your door wide. And you whisper into the hallway, "We're still here." The note is short and written in charcoal on the back of a whiskey label. "This town's had enough of you." That's it. No name, no signature, just the message and the bottle, shattered on your porch steps. You find it just before dawn, the glass glittering like tiny teeth in the weak light, the words already smudged by morning dew. You don't flinch, you've seen this trick before. But the girls, they notice. The threat works not because it's loud, but because it's quiet. Because someone crept through the dark and left a warning in your own bones. No shouting, no mob, just pressure. And that's more dangerous than a pistol in your face. It means someone wants you gone but hasn't decided how public to make it yet. Later that day, May reports that the butcher refused to sell to her. Lottie says someone spat near her boots on the boardwalk. A regular, quiet, polite, always tipped well, crosses the street when he sees Violet. Doesn't even nod, just walks faster. The shift is small but unmistakable. The town's turned its shoulder, and you know why. The preacher may be gone, but his stink remains. Cobb's whisper campaign is spreading through the cracks. And now, after the fever, after Leah, after Dora, the town is ripe for a scapegoat. You, with your house full of girls who laugh too loud and outlive expectations. You, who never asked permission, who took space and made it sacred. They're not coming with pitchforks, they're coming with silence. Vigilante justice in the West rarely arrived with legal paperwork. It came wrapped in hoods or hidden under the cloak of concerned citizens. Madams were often driven out by boycott, slander, or good old-fashioned threats dressed up as morality. One saloon keeper in Kansas returned from church to find her entire roof torn off. Another in Utah was encouraged to leave town after her supplier tripled his prices overnight. You've read those stories, and now you're living one, so you prepare. You meet with Samson first. He's been sleeping with a rifle since the fever. You ask him to start doubling his rounds at night. No questions asked. You give him more whiskey and fewer rules. He understands. He doesn't smile much, but when he does, it's with teeth. Then Hazel. You walk the perimeter with her, checking every lock, every hinge. She adds an extra blade to her boot and starts wearing the long coat she once said reminded her of home. She doesn't say what she thinks, but she's always standing between you and the window now. You tighten the house routines. Girls don't go out alone. Deliveries are checked twice. You move the real ledger again, this time into a box of stove wood by the hearth. A spot no one would look. Too plain, too grimy. You add a second key to the upstairs safe and slip it into May's apron seam. This isn't panic. This is protocol, because you've learned what it looks like when a town turns, and you're not leaving quietly. The next day, 2 men in brown suits visit. Town council types. The kind who puff when they talk and wear pocket watches like sceptres. They say there's been concern from residents, that the house is not aligned with the future image of the town. They say it like they're offering you a kind smile and a pat on the head. You offer them coffee. They decline. They say they're not trying to shut you down, just gently urging reconsideration. You nod, listen politely, and say you'll think about it. You do not think about it. You do, however, open the drawer where you keep the sealed envelope. The one with names. Names of men who've passed through your doors and left secrets with your girls. That preacher, that banker, even the tailor who likes to be called Countess Margaret once a month. You don't use it, but you remember you have it, and you sleep better that night, until the rock hits your window. It's loud enough to wake the whole house. The glass cracks, clean across, and you hear the girls scrambling in the dark. Hazel's already in the hall, pistol drawn, hair a wild mess of sleep and suspicion. You run downstairs, nothing outside, no sound, and just another note, this one wrapped around the rock. Go now, or we make you go. You stare into the dark. The town is silent. Too silent. You swear you can hear your own heartbeat bouncing off the eaves. This time you don't go back to sleep. The next day you call a house meeting. Everyone, all the girls, Doyle, May, even Sampson leaning against the doorframe like a loyal shadow. You tell them the truth. About the threats, about the silence, about the fact that the town might be done pretending they want you here. Lottie asks if they should leave. Violet asks if they should fight. You say neither. You say, we hold, because if they drive you out, they win. They turn your house into a cautionary tale. They replace your warmth with silence and pretend it was never needed. They rewrite your story while your bed's still warm, so you stay. And you prepare for the next rock. The next cough. The next masked man with a torch and a fragile sense of righteousness. You stay because you remember Gin, because you remember Dora, because you remember the way the girls looked at you when they were scared and you didn't flinch. And because if they want you gone, they'll have to tear the whole house down. And even then, you'd still be standing in the ashes. You leave before dawn, wrapped in a plain wool cloak and riding a mule that smells like wet rope and old hay. Samson doesn't like it. Argued for hours last night. Said you shouldn't go alone. But you waved him off. Told him someone has to mind the house, and that you won't be long. Truth is, you need this. You need a break in the noise, the looks, the threats layered like dust over everything you've built. You need distance. You head south, toward a town with no name worth remembering, just a smudge on the map beyond the bend in the dried-up riverbed. It's a place you once passed through years ago, before you had a house, before you had girls and ledgers and enemies with pretty words. You rode through that town wearing a borrowed bonnet and your last good pair of boots, and you promised yourself you'd never go back. But now, you're not that woman anymore. Now you're something else. It takes half a day to reach it. The trail is cracked and sunbitten, lined with twisted trees and fence posts that lean like drunks. When you ride into the outskirts, you half expect to see ghosts, your own reflection in the window glass maybe, but it's quiet, cleaner than you remember. Someone's been fixing things, painting, dusting off the corners. The saloon's still there, smaller than yours, new curtains, same creaky porch. You tie your mule outside, wipe the dust off your boots, and walk through the doors like it doesn't matter what anyone sees. Inside, it smells like lemon oil and whiskey. A girl you don't know stands behind the bar. She's young, barely old enough to drink what she's serving, but she watches you the way a survivor does. Sharp, soft in just the right ways. When you ask for Rose, her eyes widen. Miss Rose doesn't see visitors, she says. She'll see me. The girl hesitates, then nods, disappears up the stairs. You wait. You don't sip your drink, don't lean on the bar, you just let the memory of this place wash over you like smoke. You remember the corner table where you first made a man cry by saying no. The upstairs room where you took your first payment, your first bath, your first breath after deciding you weren't going to die like your mother did. Rose appears a few minutes later. Same walk, same eyes. Her hair's greyer now, coiled like iron wire, and she's holding a cane, but she still moves like a storm that forgot how to stop. When she sees you, her lips twitch. "Well, hell," she says. "I figured you were dead." "Almost," you reply, "but not yet." She takes you upstairs. Her office is clean, cosy. She lights a lamp, pours coffee, gestures for you to sit. No small talk. You like that about her. "I'm guessing this isn't a social call," she says. "It's not." You tell her everything, not in the trembling way of a girl asking for help, in the way of a woman checking her math with someone who taught her how to count. You talk about Leah, the preacher, Cobb, the sickness, the threats, the silence. You don't dress it up. You don't need to. When you finish, Rose leans back, taps her cane once against the floor. "They want you gone," she says, "but they want you to walk yourself out so they can sleep at night." You nod. She says nothing for a while. Then she gets up, pulls a tin from the shelf and tosses it to you. Inside, silver coins, old ones, real weight. "For emergencies," she says. "Buried that the year I thought I'd have to torch this place and run." You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. "You're still one of mine." It stings how much you needed to hear that. The rest of the day passes in quiet. She shows you her books, you show her yours, you talk strategy. Who to bribe, who to threaten, how to make your house more unkillable than it already is. She tells you about a lawyer in Santa Fe who helped her once. Cleans up titles, scrubs records, buries paper trails like bones. You take notes. That night she offers you a room. You decline. You need to be back before dawn, before they notice the gap. As you leave, she says, "You built something better than I ever did. Don't let them take it." You don't reply, you just tip your hat and ride. The road back is colder. The wind cuts sideways like it was punishing you for leaving. But your mind is sharper now. You're already planning. Already rewiring the house, the ledgers, the whole damn operation. It's not enough to survive anymore. You're going to dig in, fortify it, you return before breakfast. The girls don't say much, but they watch you. They always do. They see something different. Not just the dust and the road. Something in your face, in the way your boots land harder on the floor. You call May first, hand her the silver. She doesn't ask where it came from. "Bury it," you say. "Use it only if we need to disappear." Then Violet, Hazel. You start assigning shifts like it's wartime. Post watchers, inventory ammo, lock up anything personal. Every ledger gets duplicated. You create 3 new hiding places. You scatter keys like seeds. The whole house breathes deeper. Because when you return from the brink, it teaches everyone else how to stand taller. Historically, women like you didn't get to go back to old mentors, didn't get to ask for advice or money or support. Most died before the age of 40, but a few made it. A few survived long enough to visit the places they once escaped and find allies there. Not many, but enough. Now you've got one again. That night you open your own safe, pull out your real ledger, add a new name to the end, Rose. Next to it you write, "Still standing." Then you close the book, lock it, and go downstairs to join your girls. Because you're not just surviving now, you're preparing for whatever the town wants to throw at you next. You hire muscle, not for show, not for intimidation, and not to throw drunken cowboys into the street, though they'll do all of that too. You hire muscle because the air's turned sour and you can smell the trouble before it arrives, like the sulfuric scent just before lightning cracks open a dry plain. It's not just the notes or the stairs anymore, it's the weight of silence. The town watching, waiting, gathering kindling, and you're not going to let them strike the match without someone posted at every exit. His name is Hatch, 6'4", all scars and squint, with the kind of voice that suggests he once smoked a campfire. He walks like a man who doesn't believe in speed unless it's necessary. But you've seen him move. Fast, quiet, efficient, like a switchblade. The scar across his chin curves up like a permanent smirk, and he only ever says "Ma'am," with either respect or warning. You're not sure which yet. Hazel doesn't like him at first. Says he smells like old whiskey and dried blood. You say that's probably accurate. You didn't bring Hatch here to be liked. You brought him because he once pulled a bounty off a train roof without waking the passengers inside, because he's been shot twice and still has the bullets, and because he didn't blink when you asked him how he felt about working for a woman. "I feel like I've worked for dumber," he said. You hired him on the spot. You give him the attic room and access to the upstairs hallway. Within hours, he's reinforced the front and back doors, moved his rifle cleaning station to the parlour corner, and installed a pulley system for signalling from the roof. You don't ask how he learned all that. He doesn't offer. Within the week, the change is noticeable. Cobb's boys linger less near your alley. The men who used to loiter across the street sipping slow from flasks suddenly lose interest in your block. A few brave fools still try their luck. One grabs Lottie's arm near the stables and ends up unconscious with his teeth in the dirt. Another follows Dora's replacement, her name's Mina now, into the alley and leaves with a dislocated shoulder and a warning Hatch delivers without raising his voice. You don't gloat, you don't post warnings, you just let the town notice that your house is no longer an easy mark. It's a fortress with velvet curtains. The girls adjust quickly. Mina starts taking self-defense lessons from Hazel, who teaches with brutal tenderness, slapping hands away and correcting stances with clipped nods. Violet sharpens her own knives and teaches Lottie where to aim if a man gets too close. May adds a whistle to her keyring and begins carrying coded messages in the lining of her skirts. Even Doyle, soft-spoken and always slightly off in his own melody, keeps a pistol beneath the piano now, just in case. Historically, madams often hired retired outlaws, aging gunslingers, or disillusioned lawmen, not just for protection, but for intelligence. These men had eyes for danger and ears tuned to whispers. One madam in Arizona kept 3 former Pinkerton detectives on her payroll, not to solve crimes, but to make sure none reached her doorstep. They were less guards, more human shadows. You ask Hatch one evening what he used to do before all this. He says, "I used to make sure men died quietly." You ask him if he still does. He says, "Depends on who's asking." Fair enough. Still, there's an edge to him that keeps you awake some nights. Not fear, more like anticipation. Like hiring Hatch was opening a door to a darker room you've always avoided, and now you're just waiting for something inside it to blink back. But you don't regret it, because the house breathes easier, the girls sleep deeper, the porch creaks at night, but no one dares step too close. And that peace, that illusion of safety, that's worth its weight in gold. One afternoon, a stranger rolls into town, tall, clean-cut, teeth too perfect for someone who claims to be a cattleman. Hatch clocks him before you even get a glimpse. Says he's seen him before, riding with lawmen in Kansas, escorting rail barons in Colorado, not a cattleman, a scout. The kind who comes before the money, before the land grab, before the town gets scraped clean of the inconvenient. You watch him. Don't engage. He doesn't come to your saloon, doesn't need to. His job isn't to buy drinks, is to watch who walks in, to make notes, to prepare a list of people who won't be welcome when the new hotels and marble storefronts arrive. He stands on the corner and smiles. And that's when you start drawing up exit plans. Not because you're giving up, but because you're not going to be caught with your corset down if the town decides to turn fully against you. You prep a second safe house across the river, a small cottage you've paid off under another name, just in case. You update your will, adjust your ledgers, write letters you don't send addressed to women in other towns who'd hide your girls if everything fell apart. You set up coded signals with May, a lantern in the back window. If the council votes to shut you down, 3 knocks on the floorboards beneath the stairwell if it's too late to run. Some nights you stand outside on the porch beside Hatch, both of you quiet. Do you think they'll do it, you ask? He doesn't ask what it means, just says, if they do, they won't smile while doing it. You nod, light a cigarette. The wind smells like firewood and approaching storms. You're not afraid anymore, not like before. You've got a plan. You've got a man with a shotgun who doesn't care about reputation. You've got girls who've survived worse. You've got a house that creaks like it's alive. And if they come, they'll learn that madams don't beg, they barricade. And sometimes they bite back. You start hearing footsteps where there shouldn't be any. Upstairs, down the hall, behind the kitchen door. Just soft, creaking sounds that fade before you can follow them. At first you blame the house, it's old wooden, swollen from years of dry heat and damp winters. But after a while, it's not the wood you distrust. It's the feeling. That pressure behind your shoulder. That flicker of motion in your peripheral. Like someone's still here, watching. One night Violet swears she saw Leah. Says she passed by the window on the second floor. Just a blur in the dark, a braid swinging behind her, the same as always. But when Hazel checked the yard, there was nothing. No footprints in the dirt, no sound, no shadow. Just wind. You don't say it out loud, but part of you hopes Violet was right. Not because you want Leah back. Not exactly. But because if Leah's watching, it means she regrets leaving. And if she regrets it, maybe she's still got a tether to the place. Maybe she's still scared of what you know and of what you might do with it. Still, things shift after that. Little things. Dora's perfume bottle moves 3 inches from where she left it. A door creaks open after it was locked tight. Lottie finds her hairbrush tucked into someone else's drawer. May discovers a name scrawled on the edge of the ledger in handwriting that isn't hers, or yours, or anyone's you recognise. It says, "Don't forget me." You check the doors, the windows, nothing's been forced, no signs of a break-in, just presence. The girls start whispering again. Hazel scoffs, says it's all nerves and drafty boards, but she's sleeping with a knife under her pillow now, and she's stopped leaving the hallway candles lit overnight. Doyle starts playing older songs, slower ones that sound like the end of things. And you've begun talking to the house again. Just in passing, just small things. "All right now," you say when the floor creaks. "Easy there," when a picture tilts for no reason. You light more candles than you used to, leave them burning through the night. It makes the place feel less empty, or maybe just more seen. Because here's the truth. The house isn't just brick and timber anymore. It's memory. And memory, once thick enough, becomes haunted. Historically, saloon houses like yours gained reputations for being touched. Ghost stories started early and stayed long after the women were gone. Patrons swore they saw shadows of girls dancing when the rooms were empty. Mirrors that wouldn't stay clean. Rooms that stayed cold no matter the fire. One madam in Deadwood said her house spoke to her, whispering warnings before raids or fights. Most called her mad. But the house never burned. You understand that now. This place has been soaked in too much life to ever go quiet. And sometimes when the girls are asleep and the moon cuts through the parlour just right, you swear you hear them. The ones who left. The ones who died. The ones you couldn't save. Footsteps upstairs, laughter behind a closed door, a cry soft and distant that no one else seems to hear. You don't find it frightening. You find it loyal. One night you catch Hatch staring at the staircase like it owes him money. "You hear it too?" you ask. He nods once, doesn't elaborate, doesn't need to. Instead, he tells you a story low, quiet, about a mining camp he worked near once. A girl disappeared one winter. Everyone swore she ran off, but they kept hearing her laughter in the wash house, years after. Hatch doesn't believe in ghosts, he says, but he believes in residue. "This house has seen things," he mutters. "Things don't always leave." The next morning you find boot prints in the dust near the ledger drawer. Too small to be Hatch, too light to be May. You don't follow them. You dust over them with your own foot and keep walking. Because whatever's here now, it's not cruel, it's watching, guarding. Even the girls start changing the way they move. Softer steps, whispered goodnights. Hazel starts leaving little offerings, bits of bread, a silver coin, a dried flower, tucked into cracks in the walls or slipped beneath the stair. You ask her why. She shrugs. "Can't hurt," she says. "Might help." And maybe it does, because for the first time in weeks, the house feels steady, not calm, never calm, but held together, like something is keeping the structure up besides nails and hope. The next visitor to come through the front door doesn't stay long. Just a man with a badge and a ledger of his own. Says he's investigating a disturbance in the county. Leaves his card, doesn't drink, doesn't smile. You tuck the card into the floorboard beneath your desk where the rest of the warnings live. That night you dream of the house catching fire. Not from torches or lightning, from inside. But when you wake, the walls are cool, the lamps are lit, Hatch is still on the porch, and somewhere above you a door creaks gently shut. The house is still holding. You sit at your desk, the real ledger open, and add a new entry. Not a name, just a word. Presence. You underline it twice, because some things don't leave. And maybe that's the point. Maybe you're not meant to survive despite the house's ghosts. Maybe you're meant to survive because of them. It starts, as so many endings do, with smoke. Not thick, raging fire smoke. The kind that bellows and blinds and signals the end of everything. But a faint, curling wisp, like a message passed under the door. It drifts through the parlour in the early hours before dawn, when even the house has gone quiet. You catch the scent first, burned cloth, maybe hair, and your feet are on the floor before your eyes are even fully open. You don't bother dressing, just wrap yourself in a shawl, grab the shotgun, and move barefoot down the hall, slow and deliberate. Hatch is already at the bottom of the stairs, shirt half buttoned, holding a lantern in one hand and a revolver in the other. "It's not us," he says. "It's him." He points with the lantern. The glow barely reaches across the street, but it's enough. Cobb's place. Fire licking up through the broken windows. golden light flickering behind stained glass and smoke rising like it's trying to rewrite the sky. You step onto the porch. The air is strange, charged, like after a lightning strike. But there's no panic in the streets, no buckets or men yelling for water, just quiet. You realise with a chill that no one is trying to stop it, that someone wanted it to burn. Hazel steps out behind you, hair wild, boots on. Lottie and Mina follow, sleepy-eyed but alert. May appears with a blanket around her shoulders and a pistol in her pocket. Violet's already halfway down the street, heading toward the flames like she's looking for something. Or someone. You don't stop her. Because deep down, you already know how this ends. When you reach the edge of the lot, you see Cobb. He's in the street, yelling at no one, waving a pistol around like it's a prayer, and he's waiting for it to be answered. His shirt's half torn, his hair a sweaty mess. The fire dances behind him, growing louder by the second. "It was you!" he screams when he sees you. "You think you can burn me out? You think this makes you queen?" You say nothing. Just step closer, hands at your sides. Hatch appears beside you, calm and loaded. Cobb laughs, a dry, sick sound, and lowers the pistol. "You ruined everything, yeah, so..." This town used to be decent, and now you've got women running it, ghosts in the alleys, and whores giving sermons. Sounds like progress, you say. He raises the pistol again, and for a moment the world slows. You see his eyes, bloodshot, desperate, cracked wide with the terror of being irrelevant. You see the fire behind him, and how it's not just wood burning, but everything he built, every debt, every dirty coin, every lie. Then Violet's voice cuts through the air. "Put it down, Cobb." He turns just enough for Hatch to move. Not fast, not brutal, just efficient. The pistol is gone from Cobb's hand before he even realises it, and the man drops to his knees, coughing from smoke or shame. It's hard to tell. The fire swallows the rest. They say the blaze started from a tipped oil lamp that someone threw a bottle, that one of Cobb's girls, one who'd had enough, lit the curtains and never looked back. You never learn which version is true, but by dawn it's ash. The council doesn't ask questions, they don't investigate. They say the saloon was a nuisance and quietly shuffle Cobb out of town in a covered wagon. His wrist in a splint and his reputation in splinters. No charges, no trial, just a man whose time ran out. And you? You go back to your house, pour coffee and sit in the parlour with the windows open. For once, no one looks in with suspicion. No one glares. A few people even nod as they pass. Nods like respect, like fear, like they're wondering if you're next. Because out here, a woman who wins is more dangerous than a man who burns. You don't claim victory, not out loud. But the girls know. They move differently now, not quieter, not softer, but taller. Mina hums when she sweeps the stairs. Hazel starts teaching the younger girls how to shoot. Lottie grows a spine so strong you'd swear it's forged iron. May reorganises the ledgers, moves the emergency stash, and starts a second set of books. Future projections, expansion plans, dreams drawn in decimal points and curled ink. She does it without asking permission. You wouldn't have given any anyway. You add one last name to the back of your ledger. Cobb. Beside it, ashes don't threaten. And beneath that you write, still here. Historically, very few madams ever saw their rivals fall. Most were pushed out first by politics, disease, marriage, or death. But when they did survive long enough to watch their enemies collapse, they rarely gloated. They rebuilt, doubled down, expanded. Few even wrote memoirs, though those were usually burned by someone else after they were gone. You won't need a memoir. Your house will tell the story. The following Sunday, a girl named Ruth knocks on your door. 17 maybe. Bare shoes. Dirty hem. She's got that hollow-eyed look that says she's been running too long with no destination in mind. "I heard you might have room," she says. You nod. Invite her in. You show her where to sleep, where to eat. You explain the rules. No violence, no lying, no touching without asking. You tell her she'll earn her place, but she'll never owe her body for it. And then, as you've done for years now, you hand her a key. Because that's how you survive in this world. You make space, you light candles. You write names down so the world won't forget them. You outlive the men who wanted you small. And when the fires come, as they always do, you stand tall in the smoke surrounded by women who know how to hold a line. So now the house is quiet again. In that rich, full way silence takes on when it's earned. No more threats on the porch, No more whispers through cracked windows. No more wondering who'll turn on you next. Just the hum of conversation in the kitchen, the soft shuffling of slippers on worn wood, the faint clink of teacups and May's voice reading out tomorrow's delivery list. You sit near the front window, ledger on your lap, coffee cooling in your hand. The sunrise hits the glass just right, throwing golden rectangles across the rug. Hatch nods to you from the porch. Hazel's teaching Ruth how to lace her boots without blistering her heels. Doyle is playing something low and old, a melody so familiar it feels like breath. You think of everyone who came and went. Dora, Leah, Jin, Ilse whose names you still say in your head even if no one else remembers. You think about how this all started with fear, with hunger, with the stubborn refusal to let the world turn you into nothing. And now you're not just surviving. You've become the very thing they tried to erase. Not a cautionary tale, not a tragedy, not a sin hiding behind lace curtains. You're a monument, a map, a mother to the misfit, and a thorn in the side of the men who thought they'd write history without you. And if the next fire ever comes, well, you'll be waiting with the door unlocked, the house lit, and every girl inside ready to stand beside you. Because survival isn't just a story out here, it's the law, and you helped write it.